Hey, what's going on, everyone? So we're just going to wait a little bit. We got another guest today. Make sure one of these pens work here. Actually, I like the color black a little bit more. Okay, cool. All right. All right, guys. So I'm just going to, I have another guest today. I'm actually going to catch up with an old friend that I haven't seen in probably like almost 5 years at this point. We used to coach together in person when I was still doing in-person coaching. So maybe it's been even a little bit longer than that. I forget exactly. But I see some people have already jumped in, and actually my friend Warren is already here. So I'm actually going to use this call as like a catch-up call with him. But honestly, he has a lot of great ideas, and it's good to kind of throw ideas back and forth. So we're just going to be talking about life, health, sustainable lifestyle patterns, and just whatever else comes our way. So let me see here. Boom. One sec, Warren. There we go. Jumped in as well. All right, so give it a little bit, and then we'll rock and roll. Bam! Warren's in the house.
There we are. What's up, Eugene?
Hey man, I like your bookcase. I used to have like a bookcase behind me, but I'm still visiting my parents here in Vegas,
Nice,
so no bookcase for me. But
nice.
if I was back in Texas, then it would just be nothing but books in the background on both screens. You know?
Mate,
We can we can start our own library, dude.
I know. The thing is, mate, you know what it's like. You got to be acquiring that knowledge, haven't you?
One more time. Your
I
your
said you got to
accent
be,
sometimes gets to me.
yeah, you got to be acquiring that knowledge. You know, that's the thing, and that's one of the things I respect about you, Eugene, is that you're someone that's a seeker after the truth. You constantly trying to grow and trying to refine yourself and find ways to basically, look for what's the most true and relevant thing. Because in this day and age, it's a really challenge to actually, basically distill down what's real and what isn't real. And that's the thing I appreciate and respect about you because all those years ago when we knew each other, like I remember you recommended that book to me, Civilized to Death.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
remember that book? That
by
was a fun,
Christopher Ryan.
yeah, that was a fun book. I liked it. And it's, again, it's like, these are the problems that we're facing today. A lot of these issues that we're having, it's all dopamine driven. It's about, instant reward versus long-term delayed gratification and that kind of thing. And that's where we find ourselves in society. So yeah, I feel like, if you can be someone that's like about reading, slowing down, you're in the 1% basically.
Yeah, and it's sad how easy it is to be in the 1% these days, you know?
I know.
It's not it's
So
not even
true.
the Olympic level, but yeah, I always had a fascination with books and was always an avid reader because it's always like a good chance to it's basically like you're going on a coffee date with the author,
Right.
you know, and getting to like rent their ideas or kind of share their ideas with them pretty much for like on Amazon now you can buy like a used book for like $1, you know? And
It's
basically you can
amazing.
get yeah, basically you can get like 20 years. It took them probably like 20 years of thoroughly studying that subject before they wrote a book on it. And then you can at least have like solid enough understanding of the material there. And like, I don't know, it'll take you like 3 days or 4 days to read, finish that book. And I always thought like, man, it's like, if you just spend like, just read 10 pages every night before you go to sleep. I mean, that's already like 2 books a month, roughly,
Right.
with average size books, and that's already like 24 books a year, which is it seems far more interesting to me than watching the Kardashians, you know, on Netflix or wherever the hell it is. So
So true. So true. How's your travels been?
it's pretty good. I actually just got back from Seattle late last night, so I was kind of just hanging out with a friend there and watching, basically watching their pets in their apartment while they're going on a trip. And it's a pretty cool city. I like it. I like it a lot. It's like it's kind of like goofy in one way because everyone there is like supporting all these random causes. But I just think like at the end of the day, it's like especially with the whole like you know I'm an immigrant myself. Don't get me wrong, but I came here legally. Especially with the whole immigration thing, like we're welcoming all immigrants and stuff like that. But I think it's like moreover like plastic love,
Mm,
you know? It's like we love
right.
you and care about you, but as long as we don't have to do anything for you. And I'm like, oh, well, if you have these signs in your window, like just let them sleep in your house then, you know,
Right.
when they
Right.
come over or stuff
Right.
of this sort. But it's overall like a very beautiful city. And I've been there like a couple of times. I used to like mountain climb way back in the day, like in the North Cascades all the time. So it's not like the first time in that state, but it's like it's very beautiful overall. How are things
Nice.
with you? You're in Irvine still, right?
No, I'm in Laguna Niguel now.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
So
Got it.
yeah, it's
Okay.
great. It's a great little spot we have here. We got like a little sort of a house that has like a garden that goes all the way around. So
Uh-huh.
we've obviously built some gardens out. We've had some raised beds. We planted some trees, and we've got an orange tree. We've got a lemon tree that was actually already here when we moved in. Since then, we've like planted an apple tree. We've got like a passion fruit vine, which is producing tons of passion fruits. And then we have about 8 chickens, which is pretty cool for Laguna Niguel. You know what I mean?
Have you ever thought of getting like ducks, like or a mix of ducks and chickens, or you're just going
You
all
know
out
the thing
chicken?
is that my wife doesn't like duck eggs. She
Oh,
doesn't. So I was raised on duck eggs. Like that for us was like a real like, oh lovely, you got a duck egg, you know, because I was raised in England. So it's kind of more of a gamey taste, and I think that's the thing with Americans. They're not used to the sort of real gamey taste of like meats and things like that. So my wife does not like duck eggs.
oh, that's interesting. I can never decipher like the taste difference between either. I used to like eat duck eggs all the time as well, but I can never even taste the difference between duck eggs or chicken eggs at all, like
Really?
personally.
Wow.
I just thought they're like bigger, so you're getting more bang for your buck per
Yeah,
egg,
yeah.
you know?
Well, I know they produce more as well, and also they lay throughout the winter, which is better as well because over the winter time the chickens start shedding their feathers, and then they just don't lay anymore. So it's like it's crazy actually when you think about
Hmm.
how like these grocery stores keep banging out so many eggs. Like how are they doing that? I don't even know. Pretty
I
crazy.
It's probably like indoor grow houses,
They
where
must have. Yeah.
they keep the temperature always kind of level with
Right.
perfect whatever reproduction capabilities and stuff of that sort. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
not running no factory farm,
No, no, no.
pumping out
Definitely
those
not.
eggs.
Definitely not. Where are you getting most of your meats and stuff from these days? Do you have like a good source in Texas?
um, I mean, I guess it's a Texas company. I buy a lot of like Force of Nature meats. I mean, it's
Okay.
from natural grocers. That's my preferred like grocery store to go to.
Yeah.
I do hunt,
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have made a friend right outside of the San Antonio area that owns like a whole bunch of land that he lets me use there.
That's nice.
But I'm just a lot more successful, it seems like, at the grocery store than out in the wild. It
Right.
seems like with the credit card, it's much easier to go hunting there,
Yeah.
than out in the wild. It
Totally.
seems like wherever I am, the wild game is
That
not. But then when I'm
is
driving on the
funny, dude.
highway, I see them everywhere. But then when I'm actually like trying to pursue them, it's like they're nowhere to be found for some reason. But yeah, that's where I shop,
That's funny.
mostly natural grocers.
Mm.
But I buy Force of Nature Meats, which is kind of in Austin. It's like a Texas-based company. It's like an umbrella company that basically sets up contracts with a lot of regenerative farms, and then they kind of source like elk, deer. They sell wild boar as well, just like legit grass-fed, grass-finished beef and bison
Yeah.
also. And I think 10,000 Hills, it's an AGA certified grass-fed beef producer, and I buy a lot of their stuff from natural grocers also. And and that's it. And then just pretty much like whatever I catch as well. But pretty much, but like I maybe from hunting get like maybe 100 pounds of meat a year. So it's not that great yet,
Hmm.
but I want to challenge myself kind of like with your garden. I set up a 10 by 10 garden in my place too, and was able just within 3 months to produce um, like 2 pounds of fresh produce a day,
Right.
uh, you
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
which is more than enough for me personally. I don't have kids like you.
Yeah.
But then the goal is to eventually, it will be interesting. It will be an interesting challenge to not have to rely on the grocery store anymore.
Dude. Yeah.
That's for sure. So I want to over time challenge myself to do that. I think that would be super cool. Um, and then that's about it. I mean, they're like as you know, they're huge. They're especially with produce, like a lot of advantage with growing it in your backyard, simply because um, with the time delay, usually with industrial operations, they usually pick the crops also before they ripen, and it's the ripening process that actually gets a lot of the nutrients into the crop. And then there's obviously the transportation time and cost as well. So by the time you end up like buying the produce, it could be like a couple weeks old,
Right. Right.
but with your backyard, you need it that day. You go and pick it out of the ground and you pretty much eat it that day. You're going to get the maximum amount of nutrient
Yeah.
density from that particular crop
Definitely.
doing it that way, obviously. And then also you know, like what's going into it as well, which is equally
Yeah.
important.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. I think one of the key things about it is too is like bringing consciousness into it too. You know what I mean? It's like you're consciously knowing what you're doing, what you're eating, what you're providing, what you're producing, what you're putting into it. And I think the body receives food much better when you have that consciousness there. Are you familiar with much like Ayurvedic kind of principles? Have you read into much of that? No.
no, but happy to listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting, really. It's like an Indian branch of like medicine, basically. And what they say is that, you know, and obviously experience. So, what is science? Science really is it's basically validating or observing what is. So, you really can't get a much better case of that than observing nature. You know what I mean? We can see the cycles and the rhythms, the moon cycle, the lunar cycle, the circadian rhythm, the nighttime, the daytime, how the seasons change. Well, realistically, we should not be eating foods from faraway places because we're living in a different time zone from it, basically. And it means that our rhythm is not in cycle with that rhythm. So the body doesn't really receive it very well. So that's another key benefit, I think, of obviously producing your own food in your own backyard is that you're getting that. The other thing is too is that whenever you go into like Ralph's or Albertsons or whatever you call it, Nature's, wherever you are, you'll see that there has a big sign that says organic above the
Hmm.
organic section. You notice how the mist gets sprayed out?
Hmm.
Well, that's all preservative back behind it. They hide it behind the things, and it's got this liquid preservative all over it. So I saw one day in Mother's Market. I was like, "What's that?" To the guy, and he said, "Oh, that's preservative." And the bottle wasn't pushed back enough. So like that's the other thing too. That the vegetables, obviously, the shelf life, they need to keep them preserved. So they just blast them with all that kind of stuff, and then of course you eat that. So it's not good at all.
Yeah, I think the spray you're talking about, it's called Produce Max.
Produce Max,
It's
right?
a
Okay.
company called, guess who owns it? It's your favorite role model of all time, Mr.
Oh,
Bill Gates himself.
oh, there you go.
Yeah.
See, there you go. I just want to boycott going to the store. To be honest with you, like I have a thing with my wife. I'm like, let's just not buy any food from the store if we can. Like I would rather not use Sprouts or Whole Foods at all because pretty much my sort of theory is anything that's processed really is not as beneficial for you as it is in its natural state, and it's obvious to see that really. You know, like for example, if you get like a seed or a grain, if you get the whole of the seed and the grain, like you could. So there was an interesting thing that they just found in Israel. They had a seed that was 1,000 years old, and they put that seed into the ground, and it germinated, and it sprouted up into a tree. So the point of it is that the life is contained within the seed. But when you get these powders and these flours that they've milled and they've sat on the shelf for months or even years, and then you put that into food, it's completely dead. There's no nutrients in it. So for us, we get the actual whole berry, and then we grind. We actually have a stone mill that we basically grind it ourselves, and then we make our own bread. So like
Okay.
it's still processed, but then my wife just does sourdough. So it's like trying to get it back to as natural and as close as you can to the source makes it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool that you found like a wife that's actually into it. So you got to
I
win
know.
it.
Yeah,
You won the lottery,
I
man.
know.
You know?
Yeah, she's all about making the bread. So but it's not so good for the gut area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bread and butter is not good for gains. It's like obviously it's the least. You know, most of my years in training and things, I used to call myself Warren Primal. So I was all about just basically primal and paleo kind of lifestyle.
Uh-huh.
And I was all about like grass fed, and I still believe that you should always eat grass fed. You should always eat wild fish, and you should never stray from that at all. That ideal because obviously processing, but if you do like I wouldn't eat bread for years, but if you eat bread and that becomes your sole sort of source of food, like which at one point I was, and more recently for a few years I was actually vegetarian. I don't know if I ever
Mm.
told you that or not, but it
Mm-mm.
was more so for spiritual reasons. That was the reason why I did it. And anyway, it's really not good for body composition because you're just eating bread, butter, eggs. You know what I mean? And obviously it's like basically carbs and fats. And what's your body going to do? It basically stores it away.
Yeah. Look like a potato
Yeah,
after a while.
like a potato.
Look like the
Exactly.
vegetables you're going
So
to be eating. You
I
know?
know that's it. So I did that for a while, and I actually just about 3 weeks ago I started eating meat again,
Oh,
and
okay. So
it was
this is recent. You did it for
yeah,
quite a long time.
yeah, I did. And so for probably like most of my younger life I was all about gains, and only cared about working out. I was all about my body and how I looked, and really, to be honest with you, it came from a place of absolute weakness. It was never from a
Hmm.
place of strength. It was from a place of identification with this body mind complex. I thought that I was this body mind. And because of that, I suffered. All my suffering came from that complex. So in actual fact, it's so paradoxical, but the more that we seek or chase what we think makes us happy, the less happy we actually become. The more that we say no to what we think makes us happy, the more we discover true happiness. And that's basically the truth of all religion. Every religious teacher tells you that. I'm pretty sure that your book that you're reading right now is saying the same thing. It's to do with the egoic complex, the body mind matrix, basically. But the reality is that if we think we are this body mind, we suffer. Because you see, the thing is that nothing in this world lasts. Everything goes through a cycle. It's born, it grows, it ages, it declines, and it dies. So this is the thing. This is why you see so many people in this world really suffer. They suffer so much because of attachment to things that don't last. People think that they can get lasting happiness from things that don't last. And that's why I say it's the definition of insanity, really. So this is what I think, like for me, what I did was I was really about the body, really about my health and biochemistry and nutrition and how it all works. And it was all very, very useful and very valid. And I'm glad that I did, because now I've got kids. It's really important that I feed them the right way, educate them the right way, teach them to drink pure water, make sure that help them to make smart choices. But it's still a relative truth, because the body and mind are basically temporary and they're going to perish. So the relative truth is anything that we can see in this third dimension, but the spiritual plane is a higher truth. It's not, it's basically, it's not objective, it's the pure subject. And when you go into the spiritual path really, really deeply through practices of like meditation and prayer and things like that, that's when you basically open yourself up to more knowledge of different things that aren't in this realm, kind of thing. But, and here's the point. So there's kind of like this barrier between us and knowledge. So like, the point is this, that everywhere we look in this world, there's suffering everywhere you go. And the reason why we suffer is nothing other than ignorance. Ignorance just means not knowing. So like, I personally don't subscribe to any one religion, but I would say that all religions have the truth within them. All of the major religions do. And what they do is they really, all of them are basically diagnosing the same problem, because it doesn't matter where you come from. You could come from Ukraine, you could come from Philippines, you come from Thailand, you come from America, you come from England. We're all humans and we all suffer with the same problem. You see, the reality of this reality here is duality. Everything is balanced by its polar opposite. So if it's male, female, night, day, light, dark, acid, alkaline, anabolic, catabolic, good, evil, heaven, hell, God, devil, you know what I mean? But this is the true of ourselves as well. So it's the true of the flesh and the spirit, the ego or the false self and the true self, and that kind of a thing. So all of our problems revolve around that kind of a thing. And I think at a certain point in our lives, we need to let go of everything that we think we know and try and enter into a new belief or a new system, which is where you accept that you don't know. And that's the barrier to knowledge. Because, for example, right, so imagine if a client came to you and they say, Eugene, I've seen all these videos and all these pictures of all these guys. You got this guy in great shape. And you're like, yeah, I did, yeah. And you go, okay, well, this is what if you want to get in great shape like that, this is what you need to do. And you say, do this, 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 and this. And he goes, well, I'm not doing that. Well, how can you help him then? You see, the problem is he hasn't humbled himself. He's still living within his own framework. You've got to let down what you think you know so that you're open enough to be able to receive more. And I think that's the point of the spiritual path for a while. So like, and again, it's paradoxical, because it's like, how could it be that if I say no to what I want, that I would get more happy? But that's the paradox of this, because, the thing is, you can look around in this society, everywhere you look, more successful people, Crystal Cove down here, Newport Beach, really rich areas, Corona del Mar, and some of the most wealthy people, some of the most miserable people, they have the most stuff. So why is it not equaling more happiness? The reason is because they're fueling the wrong wolf, basically. They're feeding the wrong wolf. And that's where I think the vegetarian diet came in really helpful for me for a while, because when you get vegetarian foods, so this is the thing. I tried to find this in Christianity, and I really couldn't find it like in a very, very straight linear way. It's like it's all peppered through the Bible, but it's not in the Bible in a direct way. Whereas if you look into the yogic traditions, if you look at, for example, like Hinduism, it
Hmm.
says there's 3 types of states. They call it tamas, which is ignorance. They call it rajas, which is energy, and they call it sattva, which is peace, tranquility, enlightenment. And they say that those 3 states correlate to 3 foods. So tamas is foods of ignorance, and then sattva are foods of enlightenment. So they say that when you eat sattvic foods, and of course they're fruits and vegetables. So sattvic foods are fruits and vegetables. So if you look around, if you look at most of the spiritual saints of any of the traditions, you'll see that their diet, they barely ate for one. And what they did eat was fruits and vegetables, pretty much. And that was it. You know, they don't really eat any animals. And like, even like, for example, Rumi. Do you know who Rumi is?
I
He's a
I've
Java.
heard of him many times, but I never read
Yeah.
actually any of his work.
Yeah, you would love it. I think you would really love it because he, you know, he was a poet. He was a like a Sufi. So a lot of Muslims would reject him anyway because they would say, "Oh, that's kind of like a cult within Islam." But it's just Sufism is it's basically the mystical tradition of Islam, and it's more about like. So the thing is, it's like it's this whole thing about the God concept and everything. It's really challenging to understand it all, but you can't ever find God because God is not an object. God is the eternal subject. It is the eye that perceives, basically. But Rumi says, I went to a mosque. I was looking for God. I didn't find him there. He says, I went to a temple. I didn't find him there. He goes, I went to the Kaaba. I didn't find him there. He goes, I went to a church. I didn't find him there. He goes, I traveled the whole world. And he goes, I did not find him there. He says, and I looked in my heart, and there he was all along. But the Rumi was a really cool guy. He said something like, eating meat, it makes your heart coarse and you lose the subtlety that you need for spiritual perception.
Hmm.
So that's basically why I did what I did for a while with vegetarianism. And it was kind of like I felt led to do that. But again, it's like everything in life, isn't it? It's like with your goal, you have to understand what's your why, really. You know, it's like what's the reason why you're doing what you're doing? Because it's all based around the outcome of what you're looking for. So for example, if you have a client that's really skinny and wants to bulk up, do you give him a very, very light diet? No, you don't give him a light diet. You give him what he needs. If you have a guy that's or more overweight and he comes to you and he says, "Hey, I want to lean up. What do I need to do?" Well, you change. It's all based on the person basically, and that's the thing. So for a certain time, I went that way, and now it's like, okay, I can see that I need to make some changes because the other thing is too, and this is where I've gone with my sort of new direction of what I'm doing with life right now. I've really sort of focused on actually the chemistry issues because there it's all mind. The reality of this, our experience on Earth, it's a construct. This universe, this world that we live in, is a construct, and it's all relative to ourselves. Like it's we are the perceiver that perceives. So it's like whether you're happy or you're sad depends upon the way that you perceive your existence, and a lot of that has to do with our brain chemicals. Unfortunately, the problem is that our brain chemicals, for example, like serotonin, GABA, dopamine, they're all made from amino acids, and amino acids come from high protein foods. When you eat vegetarian foods, like for example, they don't have complete proteins in vegetables, so it's an inferior source to get it. So you can see why. In actual fact, if you look at the statistics, vegetarians have the highest amounts of depression and also suicides apparently. And I wouldn't say that was taken globally or across India, because India are mostly vegetarians. But in America, that's what a lot of the psychologists would say, that vegetarians have higher incidences of depression.
Yeah.
Pretty
Oh,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah. Well, I mean, you brought up, I thought you broke up there for a second. That's why I
Yeah,
paused for a second. Yeah, you brought up like a lot of like really good, interesting talking points. I'm just going to go in like random order here. Um, you mentioned, like, oh, a lot of times people are like striving in the external and they get kind of lost there. And I kind of noticed that pattern with myself over the years as well. I've noticed and I kind of accepted the humble idea that like, oh, like once you have your biological needs met, honestly, like anything you pursue after that in the external world might provide some sugar highs. Maybe they're intense sugar highs at best. But that's it. That's all there'll ever be. You'll get this you'll spend a few years pursuing some intense goal. You'll get it, like a promotion at work or whatever. And it'll last, the happiness might last for a month or it might last for a year, but then it's gone, and you're back to this base level plateau of like labeling spaciousness as emptiness basically, and then off to the next thing you go. And it's the same exact story. You're like, well, this next thing, when
yeah,
I get this next thing, that's it. That'll be
yeah,
complete and I'll be super happy and there won't be any worries or anything of that sort. And then you spend a few years chasing after that, and then you get it and you're like super happy and you're like, that's it, life is complete. A few months go by, maybe a year goes by max, if you're being really optimistic, and then you're like, ah, that's it, back to base level emptiness again. So
So
I kind
true.
of saw that pattern, and I also kind of looked internally and took up. I was always, honestly, I was always living a minimalist lifestyle that I picked up from my grandmother in Ukraine that helped raise me initially. And she lived without getting a job her whole entire life. She lived disconnected from society, which I think is a good thing. Because society, for the
I
most
agree.
part, especially like Western culture, have normalized physical and mental disease to the nth degree. People are like so sick, it's so common they don't even know they're sick anymore. You know,
So true.
which is the scary part. Like I don't know how many times I've seen how many times I have to speak to people daily about they're like overweight, they're on a bunch of medical drugs, and they're like, "Oh, I eat healthy and I feel totally fine." I'm like, dude, you know,
Yeah,
you need a
well,
reality check, man. You've
yeah.
normalized like pathology to such an extent, like they don't even know they're sick because the guy next to them in their office may be actually way more obese, and instead of on two antidepressants, the guy next to them is on five antidepressants. You know, so they're like, "Ah, see, I'm doing well. I'm just on two for
It's
for now."
wild,
You
isn't
know,
it?
and I'm like, dude, this is like nuts. You know what it's come down to, and it's kind of like, especially during the whole entire like circus of the shutdowns and everything, it was like just so funny because even before the virus came around, I'm not even going to mention the name here. Even before the virus came around, it's like um, Americans were already literally the sickest and most medically drugged out humans in all of human history.
Totally.
In all of
Yeah.
human history, and no one was changing anything. No one was talking about anything. It wasn't a national emergency. Then, some kind of virus comes around that basically kills like 0.005% of obese people with already a tremendous amount of health problems to begin with, and everyone is up in arms. I'm like, dude, like, have a reality
Wow.
check. You're like obese, you're medically drugged out, you're miserable. Um, and now you're worried about this thing, you know?
It's
I'm
so
like, come
true.
on, man, you have so much more to worry about. Even if that virus doesn't kill you, I mean, half of Americans are developing cancer right now in their lifetime, and half of them are dying from it. And then we have close to 900,000 deaths just from heart disease alone, which is so comical because it's so easy to avoid having a heart attack these days with the knowledge like we have and just taking the most simplest of steps,
Mm.
precautionary steps. But no one's batting an eye. That's like totally fine. But oh, there's a 0.0003% chance I'm going to get this virus and I might get a cough from it. And then maybe even a smaller percentage chance I might end up in the hospital. And they're all like in panic. I'm like, dude, go look in the mirror. I would be in panic if I looked like you every day.
The thing is though, dude, it's just that the system is just so corrupt, and again, it always fuels around the senses, the sensory systems. So it's again like this whole society is based off of consumerism, and if there isn't consumerism, the whole thing shuts down. So realistically, Shakespeare, I love Shakespeare's quotes. He says, all that glitters isn't gold. Isn't that a great saying? But that's where we find ourselves in today's society, because everyone's like, this is the thing, the senses are turned outwards. We look at things and we go, oh, I want that. And that's how this whole system has been set up. But obviously, as you know, the whole media and big telecom, big pharma, they're all in cahoots. It's all owned by basically big telecom, big pharma. So they put the narrative out that they want us to see. I mean, this whole measles outbreak right now is pretty interesting to me too. What's going on with that? Because the vaccine hesitancy is at the highest rates that it's probably been, and they're like, oh, no one's getting this now, so like let's try and draw up some some fear mongering. And like you said, no one's talking about the things that actually can really help. I mean, my thoughts on it are so the checks and balances on what makes a healthy human being is really evolution. It's nature. And you can see it's perfectly proven. Like this thing has been, you could say, created by God, but it's created by evolutionary processes that's created mechanisms to help us to survive. What does it mean? So, for example, if you look at a modern day dietitian, they talk absolute rubbish. They tell you that you should eat 4 to 5 small meals a day to prop up your blood sugars with food. What a load of rubbish that is. 100 years ago, did we have refrigeration? Did we have microwaves? Did we have a Ralph's or a Whole Foods on every corner? No, of course we didn't. So how did people eat 4 to 5 small meals a day? They didn't. It was ridiculous. So I actually watched a documentary a while ago about it. Was called The Last Tribe in the Amazon. And the guys, they found them, they had to translate their dialect because it was all different. They asked them once they had done it, what's your life like in the jungle? They said, oh, it's hard. We don't eat sometimes for 5 days. We have to eat when we can find food. Now, this goes to prove my point really, really well. And we spoke about this as well. My dog must be 16 years old at this point, and 16 years old for a bull Arab, which is like a bull mastiff, cross Great Dane, cross pit bull, like 100-pound dog, 16 years old. Most dogs are dying at 9 years old, and I wonder why they're dying at 9 years old, because they're feeding them genetically inappropriate foods. When you look at what a dog's DNA is, you type it up on Google right now, you go, how close is a dog to a wolf? It says 99.99% identical. So the physiology, the internal workings of a dog and a wolf are exactly the same. The thing is, so then you go, okay, well, how long does physiological adaptation take to occur? Google will tell you 100,000 to a million years. So when did we domesticate the dog? 10,000 years ago. So has it had a chance to evolve? No, it hasn't. So do you see any wolves running around eating grains and sweet potatoes and rice? No, you don't. Hence the fact that you see dogs that have all these human diseases and dying when they're 6 or 7 years old now, having seizures and having tumors and having heart disease and having diabetes. And that's what's happened with humanity. So we were never supposed to eat 5 meals a day. And it goes to show that by our hormones, you can see that that's true. Because how many hormones do we have to regulate high blood sugar? Only one, insulin. How many hormones do we have to regulate low blood sugar? Half a dozen. We have 6 that will bring it up, but only one that will bring it down. That goes to prove my point. Our body has evolved not having much food. So, if the solution is right there in front of us, in front of our face, it's not rocket science, really. Follow nature. Nature knows what's best. And, my theory is that there's really my hypothesis, there's 3 main barriers to health today, and they all kind of like interact with each other. One is we're malnourished, right? So we're malnourished because there's no nutrients in the food. 2 is that we're toxic, right? Because obviously there's so much toxicity that we didn't have before. And the last thing is we're chronically stressed. And if you're
Hmm.
chronically stressed, it dysregulates your whole body's hormones. And then you basically have blood sugar spikes, you get hypoglycemia, you got cortisol, then you start craving different things and all this. And then if you're malnourished, you're trying to eat too much food, you're trying to eat the wrong things. The point is that, what we're seeing right now is epidemic levels of depression and addiction. Both of these things revolve around heavily 2 different brain chemicals. And these 2 brain chemicals are what are driving gratification and reward. And then serotonin is to do with contentment and pleasure. Someone that has no serotonin is depressed. Someone that has very high levels of dopamine and is up and down and erratic is someone that's addicted. So, and this is the thing. And corporations have basically very carefully done this to us through the use of sugar and through the use of social media, basically, because they know that that's how they can get us. So if you're constantly basically chasing your pleasure, reward, you end up being depressed because you're addicted. So it all basically funnels around into the same thing.
Yeah, I also found like the epic like failure of the healthcare system is kind of a good quick example is like, you're in a swamp that's full of disease, right? And you have a lot of like very intelligent health practitioners, quote unquote intelligent. I'm going to use that a little bit lightly here. Intelligent health practitioners, and they're like, you know, instead of like stepping outside of the swamp and just letting your body heal naturally in its natural environment, they're more like, let's just stay in the swamp and figure out how to tinker around this and that and basically damage control as good as we can while continuing to live in the swamp, because even like how rare is it to run into a healthy health professional, even at that,
Right.
in any field, you
Right.
know?
So
Some of the
true.
most messed up people I've run into, like psychiatrists, MDs,
Yeah.
even the health and fitness industry is full of a bunch of people on all sorts of anabolic steroids, unsustainable lifestyle patterns to attain like a physique that's not basically sustainable naturally, burning the candle on both ends, et cetera, et cetera. And like the problem I'm seeing is like basically they're like, my common sense is like just step outside the swamp,
Yeah. So
but
true.
everyone's like, no, let's just keep staying here, but just figuring out how to medicate ourselves and do this and that and these fancy elaborate protocols that basically don't work at the end of the day and maybe provide some short-term false hope relief of some sort, and then go about that way. And of course, it makes money because no one inevitably
Yeah.
gets better.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And these protocols are getting more and more expensive. And, but at the end of the day, it's not working. Like, look, Americans right now, like 9 out of 10 are metabolically sick. And again, out of the 28 human species that have come and gone, Americans right now are literally the most miserable, the most medically drugged out, and the most obese humans in all of human history. And
Crazy, isn't it?
people are still falling in line with like the symptom management model of healthcare is going to somehow all of a sudden work. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, it hasn't been working for 60 years and doing the same thing that's clearly not working is all of a sudden not going to work, you
Right,
know?
right.
But they're still like dead set on like, follow the science. And I'm not like anti-science, but it's like people need like a study to show that it's okay to go to the bathroom occasionally these
Right,
days. You
right,
know what I mean?
right.
Like
Yeah.
just like common sense stuff. And like,
So true, that
it's so
is.
silly. And it's like, dude, at the end of the day, it's just like mastering basic principles and basically, like you mentioned, just living like a human being again. And the Homo sapien, DNA has taken about like 200,000 years to form. And there are like many human species before then that led to the advent of like the Homo sapien species. And they're like intricate, hardwired biological systems that need to follow certain rules. And you're not going to like biohack your way around these rules or medically
Exactly.
drug out. Yeah. And a lot of times it's like a lot of people are like on all these medical drugs. And when you get like these highly concentrated medical drugs that disrupt like a single system, there's no, as you know, that I'm kind of talking to the audience through you, you know this stuff
Yeah,
already,
yeah,
but there is no single system in the human body. All 13 systems are interconnected.
yeah.
So when you start messing with one system, it has like a anchoring and dragging down effect on all systems. And then on top of that, the bigger issue is like, dude, if you have high blood pressure, and you go to the doctors and they give you high blood pressure medication, it may actually plummet your blood pressure. But the problem is you never changed the belief system that led to the activities that led to the high blood pressure. So in a long enough time frame, those same behaviors that are fueled by this mind virus, I
Right,
call
right.
them these belief systems like mind viruses, because that's basically what they are. A virus is something that kills a biological organism. A belief system that leads to certain behaviors that deteriorate a the same thing. It's going
Right.
to end up
It's true.
killing the. And unfortunately, you're a parent now. Unfortunately, these people have kids, and they
Yeah,
pass these
totally.
mind
Yeah,
viruses on to their kids.
yeah.
You know,
It's
and
true.
then these kids unfortunately have kids too.
I know.
And then
I
they keep
know.
passing this virus on and on and on. It's just like a sickness. It passes from person to person,
It
just
is.
like a sickness.
You know,
And then
you
they're
know,
like, then instead of worrying that they're like way overweight, they have boobs bigger than their girlfriend's boobs, they're on all these medical drugs. Now the guy's worried about getting measles. Although there's more people that die from Tylenol every year than freaking measles.
right. Right. So true. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think, and that raises an interesting point. It's like, I think a lot of this comes down to, again, it's like, what are you rooted in or anchored into? Like what's your sort of motivational or driving factor of life? Like, what's your why? Because again, it's like what you said. There's no real lasting pleasure in this world, and you can see like how temporary is this life. Like everywhere you look, everyone around you is gonna die. And it's interesting for me because on the street where I live, it's a lot of, I think it was like cookie cutter houses in probably like the 1960s they were probably made, and there's a lot of old people that live here. In the last year, no joke, I've seen about 5 people die up and down my street. And I shouldn't laugh, but there's one guy down the street called Glenn. He was a nice old guy and he would always have me moving stuff for him, and then he died. And then someone else across the street called Norm, he got moved into a home, and just so many people. And you can just see that it's just so impermanent, you know
Mm-hmm.
so like what I see is, like, for example, so many of these parents, that they're trying to cling on to something. It's all basically based in pleasure. You know what I mean? It's based in like having pleasure, trying to have lasting happiness from this thing. Whereas I bring it back to this term, and I think this term is so important. There's like 3 Sanskrit terms I think are so important for every single human to know. One is called upariti. It means cessation from worldly activity. So like, don't always be immersed in the world. Like, take a break from being in the world. That means like social media. Like if you're doing, like, for example, if you work in business and you have to be doing events or meetings, you've got to sort of take the mind off and put it down. The next one is called vigaria. It's dispassion for the world. Like, have a little bit of dispassion for the world, because where is the lasting pleasure from anything in the world? Like, what's your favorite thing? Like your favorite meal? Like, think about your favorite meal right now. How long do you feel happy after you had that meal? Not very long. You know, you might, you know, obsess about it for someone like, because obviously we work with a lot of clients that have, you know, overweight or this, that, and the other, and they get their meal and it was like, was it really worth it? Not really. And the last one is, I think, is the most important for what you're saying about, you know, this mind virus concept, and it's called viveka. Viveka, it means discrimination. And discrimination between what? It's to do with the real and the unreal. So in the Hindu philosophy, they say what is real is permanent or eternal, unchanging, and independent. It means it's not relying upon anything else for its existence. Whereas what is unreal is temporary, so it doesn't last forever. It's changing and it's dependent upon something else. So really, it's kind of like ties into. So you got to choose. You can't be with your children 24/7, and this is one of the things that I've had to sort of relinquish with my son. It's like I'm very strict about what I think is right for him and how he should live and what he should eat. I don't even like his trips to his grandma's house. I'm like, she better not feed him any of those chips, you know, no seedors on those chips, that kind of a thing. But really, it's like you can't. And I had no, with my mum, I had no real rules, you know, so I was let to be wild and free and that kind of a thing. And that you have, it has its pros and its cons as well. But the point is, I think, is what we need to do, as you know, for myself as a parent and just people in general, is practice viveka and teach kids to practice viveka. Discrimination, choosing between what's right and what's wrong. As you can see, you know, what's the purpose when you go to a shop, right? Say you go to the supermarket. Why do they put things? Like, why are they in shiny packages? Why is it on the end of the aisle? Like, because everything is vying for your attention. Like, think about it. This is what I think. What is the only food that is truly designed to be eaten? Truly, fruits and vegetables. They drop down and they're juicy and delicious and in really vibrant colors. You know, I think it's the intended, like, because it's like, it's colorful, come and eat me. But what it does is it serves a purpose. It's actually, it's quite funny because I think I say plants and trees sometimes like schizophrenic, because they're like, eat me, I need you to take my seeds and drop them down. But at the same time, what they do is they put all these barbs everywhere so they don't get eaten. It's like, it's like a schiz, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, I think. So really, it's, I think, coming down to, you know, everyone needs to practice that sort of, you know, is it going to give you instant gratification, or is it going to instant pleasure, or is it going to give you long-term delayed gratification? And that's how I think you know, these people can overcome this mind virus concept.
Yeah, you also kind of hinted at, you know, the fleeting nature of the external world and not being able to attain like lasting happiness. Like, of course, you know, nuance is important. So obviously you got to have your biological needs met, like a safe place to
Yeah.
sleep, you know, and which honestly, even most Americans don't even have these days. I think Robert Kiyosaki quoted like the average American has like $800 in their bank account. So they're constantly in this myopic state, like highly inflamed state. And obviously, you know, the average American male is about like, I don't know, probably 26, 27% body fat, which is obese. So they have like chronic inflammation in their body, which leads to obviously inflammation in their mind, which leads
Wow.
to a distorted perception of conscious reality. You know, so they're just constantly bombarded and forced into this like myopic state of not even in like survival
Right.
mode,
Right.
basically, you know, they're
Totally.
not even able to clearly even think. But I found you mentioned like, you know, the impermanence of the body and mind, and it's true, the body and mind come and go, even your thoughts come and go, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
but it's always interesting, like I always ask myself like, oh, who's like observing these thoughts, you know, they kind of almost arise out of nowhere too,
It's
and
so
you
true.
only see them
Just pause for
at,
1 second,
yeah,
Eugene.
yeah,
My dog's barking
no,
outside,
no,
and I've
yeah,
got to plug my phone in to let it charge.
okay, cool, yeah, take your time, I got to check a message really quick too. Perfect. All right, guys, if you guys have any quick questions, happy to try to answer them. But I'm going to try to let Warren do all the talking here. He's a guest, so see, a lot of people jumped in. Sorry if I haven't mentioned you guys' names, but good to see everyone. Hope everyone is doing well.
Let's see if this is going to work. My phone's about to die, Eugene. Let me see if this will work.
No, no, take your time, man.
I need to
It's all
charge
good.
it.
It's all good.
There we go. Good.
Yeah, but
Um,
we're talking about the impermanence of the body and mind. So
yep.
I always like, yeah. it's hard to find anyone to talk to about this. So there's a sprinkle of people I'm happy in my circle. One of them is you. Most people just kind of go blank and then they go like, how's this going to make me any money? You know,
Right,
their
right,
next,
right.
their next, their next topic. I'm like, well, I think it's like far more important, but to each their own. But it's funny, like with thoughts, I found, they like literally arise. If you kind of close your eyes and meditate on it, they literally arise like out of nowhere. And then they kind of stay for a little while and then subside. And there is like a little bit of a space, like a blank space. It's like a no state. And then another thought pops up, and you only notice it like after the fact. You don't even notice it before the fact, and
It's
then it kind of
amazing that you've
subsides
noticed
again.
this.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you've noticed this.
So you
Yeah,
kind of notice these thoughts are discontinuous. But whoever is observing those thoughts in that space in between the thoughts, you notice it's just continuous. It doesn't go away anywhere. And if you try to like turn your attention inward, it's just like a place of peace and calm. It's like not even describable. It's like just this blank, no state. And if you're observing something, you obviously can't be it, right? Just like the retina of the eye cannot see itself. So but
exactly.
where all your ideas of yourself come from are from your thoughts. So if you're observing your thoughts, you can't possibly be them.
Oh, Eugene, you're speaking my language now, mate.
Yeah.
That's some heavy hitting concepts you're giving right there. That's really, really good, profound thoughts there.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's kind of like basically defines your whole entire conscious experience, right, of the universe. And
Mhm.
when you like try to talk to people about these subjects, they're like, they just go blank and really like don't care. But I'm like, dude, that is so fundamental. I mean, this is your whole reality.
Exactly.
And this is what you base all of your decisions off of, just identifying with these thoughts that aren't even you, and then you identifying them as you, you
Dude,
know?
what you're talking about right now is the essence of the spiritual path. Like that is it in a nutshell. So I've looked into all of the isms: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Judaism, Sufism. And, if you take away their deities or the names for it, that what you're saying is it's the same identical problem. The problem of basically ego. It's this body mind complex. Now, it's interesting because, like, if you take religion on the surface, if you take it as literal truth, you miss the actual underlying message of what it really means. And that's what it means when Jesus said that guy called Nicodemus, who was like the religious leader, came to him and said, Jesus said, surely I say to you, you must be born again. And he says, how can a man who's advanced in years crawl back into his mother's womb and be born again? And this is very instructive, you see, because that's in there for a reason. It's in there to say, don't take it literally, because it's not literal. The point is that Jesus said this. He says, if you abide in my word, you are my disciple indeed. And he says, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Notice he didn't say that I will make you free. He said the truth itself will make you free. What's the opposite of being free? Being enslaved. What's the opposite of knowing? Not knowing. So he's saying if you don't know, you're enslaved. If you do know, you're free. So this is the essence of the spiritual path, which you just touched upon. And that's what all true religion would say. What you said, that little gap in between, that is enlightenment. That is who you truly are before you take on this form.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the thing. So it's interesting that my spiritual path kind of started in Christianity. And I went to church and I was doing all the things, and it started back in Sydney when I lived there like 10 years ago, something like that. I started going to church in America a little bit, but I felt that the message wasn't really connecting with me right, because I was hearing things that just not consistent with my actual experience and observation. Like, where do you see in this world, like everything that we do is sowing and reaping. Like, if you sow good seeds, you reap good fruits, right? If you sow bad seeds, like, you reap bad fruits. Like, tell me, if you eat junk food all day and don't exercise, are you going to be a healthy guy? No, you're going to be a fat guy, right? So it's the same with religion too. It's like Jesus said, seek and you shall find, knock, ask, enter, all those types of things. He says, you do it. But the church tells you, you don't have to do anything. Jesus did it all for you. And I don't see that there's any truth in that, So for me, started to look into different religions and look into Buddhism and Hinduism and this, that, and the other. And I picked up a really strong meditation practice for a while. And I was meditating. The reason why I say this is because what you said is exactly what I had happen to me. So when I first started, really going to church and really diving in, I had an older guy who was like in his 70s. He was like, an elder at the church, and he really came alongside me to sort of help me out. teach me what he knew. But I quickly surpassed him in the respect of experiential stuff, because all of this is experiential. This life is like a giant game, and realistically, it's like we're here to play the game and to play the game well. But I started to meditate, and this is what happened, and this is what you should do too for your own spiritual practice, because it's very, very enlightening. So I was living in Irvine, and I started to meditate more and more. I started to fast more and more. And before, remember, I was always like 225, 230 pounds, big, ripped, like always wanted to be, looking so good. Sometimes I'd balloon up to 110 kilos and all that. And I just thought that I was this body, and that was all I cared about. And then I got sick. And when I got sick, I lost a ton of weight. I got down to about 180 pounds and all that. And it was really a great blessing for me, because I sat down at the beach in Huntington. I was like, wow, this body, I'm not this body. And that was the first little bit of my awakening to a higher reality, because I was so attached and identified to this body. That was actually the cause of my suffering. So I started to meditate more and more, and I fasted for like 7 days. I was doing it quite a lot. I was barely eating any food. And I asked the question, who or what am I? And it was unbelievable what happened. I saw this light come, and all of a sudden, I've gone straight through this light, and I saw my whole life plan out. And I was like, I was looking at like 3 screens, and I was watching myself watch all of these things that had happened to me. And I realized what it was. Like, I saw my mum tell me things, I saw my friends tell me things, I saw all this stuff, and it was all like little things that I saw like a bit on a video of my own life. And I realized, wow, it's all a lie. It's actually not who I am at all. I'm just a personality display that's been formed purely by my environment, by my experiences. So I was raised in England, and at that time it was like, it was really good to be good at fighting. It was really good to be, like the tough guy, and, had to be big. And I saw Jean-Claude Van Damme videos that I watched, and, the tough guy and all that. So basically, I molded myself to try and be that way. And I realized that none of it was real. And instantly, I was taken from that space. And I would say at this time, I went through space. It was interesting because I went literally through the stars. And as I went through the stars, I was just in this dark space. And in this dark space, there was no up or down. There was no left or right. There was no in or out, inside or outside. There was actually no male or female. And I came back from that state, and I realized that, wow, like this is very interesting. So what you said is really true. It's like, what are our thoughts? This personality that we have is basically, I realized at that point, if you plop me down in China, like even in this like frame that I look like now, and you put me in like China, I would, and with Chinese parents for whatever reason or whatever, I would be speaking Mandarin or whatever the dialogue was. If you plop me in the hood in like Brooklyn or something, I'd be like a hood guy. If you put me in Texas, I'd be a Texas guy.
Hmm.
We're just really, like a mold of our environment, and that's really what we are. And that is the reason why we suffer. Because, and this is another thing, you'll laugh about this. When I was a young lad in England growing up, working in construction, my boss was all about boobs. It was all about page 3 girls in England, like the newspaper. You turn to page 3, and there's like a girl with her tits out, basically. And that was the rage at that time. It was all about big boobs. So every girl was going and getting boob jobs. Now, you don't see anyone getting boob jobs because it's not about big boobs anymore. It's all about big butts. So,
Mm.
so now the what's important to the world has changed, and now girls aren't caring about big boobs. They're actually getting their boobs taken out, and instead they're getting their butts done. So you see, they're just a projection. They're just a projection. They're just a personality display that's trying to fit in with the social norms of their environment, basically.
Yeah, there's actually an amazing book. It's actually one of my favorite books. It's called The Crowd by Gustavo Le Bon. He's
Okay.
like a French author. It's very old. I think it's from the 1800s or 1900s. I forget the exact date. But he talked about exactly that, the conditioned self, or maybe some psychologists refer to it as a false self.
Yep.
But basically, it's kind of like it's easy to test a person on this go. You ask them, let's say they bring up a belief system, like, oh, I believe ABC, and go, okay, like, why is that? You know, and they'll give you an answer actually right away at the first level. They'll say, oh, because this was this, and just simply ask them, like, oh, why is that? You know, like ask them one more time. They'll go
Yeah.
like 90% of people will go blank,
Yeah. Right.
and even if you ask, even if the person, the rare occasion the person will be able to answer one more time, just ask them one more time, why is that? And they'll most likely resort to, um, that's just just how it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? Again,
Right. Right.
it's just how
Totally.
society, like mirroring society,
Yeah.
which shows like they've literally based their whole identity off a belief system that they don't even know why it is there in place. You know, I mean, in short, it's just basically the central nervous system getting you to survive better. That's its only purpose, in the is to get you to survive better in the external world and live long enough to hopefully reproduce and go about. That's it. I mean,
It's so
look up like
mundane,
all,
though, isn't it? You
yeah,
know?
it's like it's so simple when you see it that way. It's like okay, look at all motivations. Like, oh, why do you want to go to college? Oh, I want to go to college because I can get a better job and I can have more prestige. And if I get a better job, I have more money, and thus I can live in a better neighborhood and have like more higher end friends or whatever you want to frame it as.
Yeah.
It's like, why is that important? Oh, just so I could survive better. That's it.
Yeah.
Or like, why do you even want to have kids? Like even something as it seems like selfless as kids, you know, having kids. Oh, why do you want to have kids? It's going to vary. I'm kind of summarizing it quite
No.
quickly here because I want you to kind of be the speaker. But it's like, why do you want to have kids? Oh, like let's say from a female perspective, you know, like, oh, my friends are having kids and I'm almost like 35 and I don't have that many years left and I have to have kids or whatever. Like, oh, why do you want that? Oh, so like my genes continue, you know, could be one story.
Yeah.
Or I have someone take care of me when I'm older, or I have someone I can pass my belief systems down to. Why is all that important? Oh, it's just so you can survive better. You know, it always
Yeah.
goes back to survival. Even a lot of spiritual paths. So it's like, why do you want to go on spiritual path ABC? Oh, like so I'm like more enlightened
Mhm.
and
Right.
I can
Right.
flow like with less friction throughout the world, and then
Yeah.
be like ABC, and more people would then seek my advice and see me as like some holy
Hmm.
spirit and this and that. And it's like, oh, why is that important? Just so you can survive better.
Right.
It always goes back,
It's
it
true.
always goes back to the boring topic of
You're
survival.
so
And
right.
unfortunately, humans being as delusional as they are, they start building like fantasies around basic biological functions, you know? Like the my one of my favorite movies is The Messenger with Joan of Arc, with Mila Jovovich that played Joan of Arc.
That was a cool
I,
movie. We just actually
I
watched that recently.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
It
love
was
that
a
movie.
cool
And
movie.
remember that scene? Remember that scene where she's already in prison and her visions, some guy was in the cellar with her, but it's basically she's hallucinating. Um, he was saying, oh, like, why are you doing this? Leading this campaign against the British, you know? She's like, oh, like God came to me and he dropped a sword in the middle of the field. And that sword was the symbol that I needed to take up arms against the British, which I thought was cool. I mean, she's
Yeah.
badass, you know, no
It's
doubt.
amazing, actually.
Definitely a psycho, but wife material for
Look at this.
sure. Uh,
This little book here is called The Lives of the Saints.
oh, yeah.
And
Is she one of
actually,
them?
I read about her recently in this, and
Saint
obviously I
Joan of
knew who
Arc.
she was, but not enough. And that spurred me on to go look it up and watch it. It was pretty interesting. That was a cool movie.
Yeah. And although I think Joan of Arc is super cool,
One sec, one
he
sec.
based, yeah,
My wife and kids are back now, so it
yeah, yeah.
could be a little noisy.
No, no problem. This is a casual podcast, so it's all good. Um, yeah, yeah, but anyways, he outlined like that sword could have made it to the field like a million different ways. Some soldier just randomly dropped it. There's a battle and it fell from a horse onto the ground, you know?
Yeah.
And he outlined like 10 different scenarios. But no, she picked like it came from the high heavens and fell
Hmm.
like straight down into the ground. You know what I mean? They over uh, kind of fantasize, you know, or build too many philosophies around like basic biological functions or just Earth circumstances. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That
Yeah.
basically are just tied to survival and
Yeah.
stuff of that sort.
Yeah.
Like, why do you
Exactly.
want to kick the British out?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're not French, obviously,
Right.
and they're killing you and raping you. So why it would benefit you to kick them out because you would survive better, you know what I mean? And your genes would survive better. But no, it had to be some kind of like holy story, you know what I mean?
It is interesting though. I did this a while ago. I want to show you this. It's actually. I wonder if I can show you this. If I can chart it on here really
Yeah.
well, because it's. I kind of came up with this kind of matrix of. It's if you put, for example, on one end over here. So it's the ego.
Oh, are you showing something already?
I'm going to show it to you
Oh,
in a
okay,
second.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and over here. here is the spirit. I'm going to show you this in a second. And the spirit is utterly selfless, and the ego is utterly selfish. So I don't know if you can see this. So over here is the ego, and it's selfish. Over here is the spirit, and it's selfless. So if you chart this out and you go to the ego, what are the qualities that the ego likes? It's all based around comforts, pleasure, survival. And it's utterly, so like the thing is, as soon as a baby comes out of the womb, what does it do? It cries, give me milk, give me, give me. It's just hardwired for survival, exactly like you just said. And this is where I think the Christians have really, from their kind of earliest understanding of theology, have really screwed it up with the concept of original sin. They say, oh, we're born sinners, we're born into sin. We're not born sinners. We're born into this physical body, which is hardwired for survival. And it puts myself over someone else because I want to survive over you. Basically, that's what it is. So, and again, like look at all of the different spiritual teachers, whether you look at Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, whether you look at Bhagavan Krishna of the Gita, or you look at Jesus, it revolves around this. Even the Buddha says, he says, swim upstream, right? Don't go with the flow, because everyone else is going on the easiest path, the road well traveled. Take the road less traveled, you know? Jesus says, narrow is the gate and difficult is the way. He says the wide path leads to destruction. So this is what I say, wherever you see a line, go the other way. Because the wide path, the line, the people that are lining up for something, is all about pleasure of the senses. And that's what leads to destruction. But because it's always about like my selfishness. And this is the thing too, why I think like it really is quite obvious to me. And it's also kind of like the spiritual life is very, it delves, it's so difficult because it's like, it's almost like a wild goose chase. You can never quite put your finger on what it is. It's so hard. It's kind of like obscure. It's abstract, but at the same time, it's very, very simple. The spirit is utterly, so it's like this. In Hinduism, they call it Aham Brahmasmi. It's like, I am Brahman, or Tat Vam Asi, thou art that. You are that reality. You already are perfect, complete, enlightened, already are that one reality, which that you're called Brahman. Problem is, you don't know it. You think that you are, we think that we are this. And that's the cause of all of our suffering. So the reality of it is, and this is what they say in Judaism too, in the Kabbalah, they say that God is perfect, complete, and one. Not two. There is no two. There's only one. So God, they say, is the ground of being. It's the substratum. It's so fine that makes everything up. They say, but because God is perfect and complete, can have nothing to receive because he's perfect and complete. He's whole. So therefore, God has no essence of receiving because God is complete. How can you receive if you're already complete? So God only has the essence of bestowing or giving. So they say in Judaism or Kabbalah, that's what the whole bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah is about. They say you're born with a selfish inclination. Throughout your 13 years, then you do your bar mitzvah. That's when you have to start turning yourself to be more selfless. So they say in Kabbalah, basically what we're supposed to do in life is attune ourselves to become selfless. That's what this whole thing's all about. Rashi is one of the great saints of Judaism. He says this whole construct, this whole world was created for the sake of kindness. Of course, you can't, this is the thing, you see, it is really, it's interesting, but if, so you look around and you go, well, why is there God? Why would there be suffering? And why would this homeless person be there and this, that, and the other? Why are there bad guys? Well, if there was no bad, how could you choose good? You know what I mean? If there was no stupid thing, how could you choose a wise thing? You know what I mean? If there was no, like, you know, poor thing, how could you choose a great thing? And that's the reality, really. This plane here where we live is the third dimension of duality, and duality is always with its opposite. But the highest reality is that everything is one, all coming from that same source. But you can't find it externally because it's within you. It's inside you. It's in that gap that you said, you know, that's where it really is. And that's where true peace actually resides, in that space. But you're right what you said, because there is no really selfless deed. You know, even, for example, on the spiritual path, like if you have to be honest with yourself, why does someone really enter into the spiritual path? The reason why is selfishness. In one way, shape, or form. Well, not everybody, because, for example, some people, if you're born to a Christian mum or dad, or a Jewish mum or dad, or a Hindu, it could just be tradition. You know, you just do it because that's what your family are doing, and you're just you know, you're just a product of your environment and all that kind of stuff. But for someone like me, I'd like seen that this world was kind of empty. I was like, well, I've tasted everything that I wanted to taste, and I've drank everything that I wanted to drink, and I've done everything I wanted to do. Where's the pleasure in this? But you see though, I was still looking for an escape from suffering. So I went into the spiritual path to try and find that. And I'm blessed because I feel as if I found that. And now it's like, and this is the point, you see. So like, if you feel that, so it's interesting actually, the words of God. Where do we get the word holy from? That comes from the root word whole, which means complete. It means one. Where do we get the word pure? What pure comes from, meaning one, not two. You know, so again, it always points back to this kind of oneness, like dirty or clean or unclean. It always revolves around, you know, for example, like alloy or silver, metal, like that kind of thing. It's always about this impure, this mixed, how we become mixed. And the point is that I think how we can, you know, all benefit ourselves in this life is by, I think for me personally, everyone needs to do some sort of a spiritual practice to, and by the way, so like in the Sankhya philosophy, you don't have to believe in God, actually. You don't have to believe in God. It's not a prerequisite. In actual fact, that's why I think Buddha's philosophy is really good, because Christians, Jews, Muslims, and I'm not against anybody, and I think that believing in God is a really great thing if you can do it, but it's not a prerequisite to enlightenment, actually. It's not. To have peace, so what does it mean to be enlightened? It means really to be at peace, to be okay with where you are, to see things in the correct way. Because again, like we're the experiencer, right? So it's like, what makes real wealth is not really money, is it? I know tons of people that are rich, but they're miserable. So what makes real wealth is not about what we have, but rather how we see what we have. And that's, how do you change that? That is really our inner life. We need to enrich our inner life, and that comes from doing the spiritual work. And that's where, like, you know, you got a Christian, you got a Jew, you got a Muslim. They say, I'll do good because God told me to do good. If I do good, I get to go to heaven. Is that not rooted in selfishness? Right?
Mm.
You know, or if I do bad, I'm going to go to hell. Is that not rooted in selfishness? You know, Rabia, she was one of the great Muslim saints. She says, oh, Allah, if I worship, she was one of the female Muslim saints of like the 1200s or something. She goes, if I worship you in want of paradise, exclude me from paradise. She says, if I worship you in fear of hell, then burn me in hell. She says, but if I worship you for your own sake, begrudge me not your everlasting beauty. That is it. She pinned it on the nose right there. Do good for the sake of doing good. That's it. You see, because everything else is rooted in selfishness. And the selfishness is leading you away from the truth. And that's the thing. So a Muslim says, I'll do good because Allah told me to. A Christian says, I'll do good because Jesus told me to. The Jew says, Hashem told me to do good. Buddha says, where is God? I can't find him. Where is he? He says, but do good anyway. You see, isn't that a higher philosophy? You know, that's a higher philosophy because it's not rooted in selfishness, actually. He's saying, actually, just do good. Here's another one that's really good. So there was a sadhu sitting by the river Ganges in India, and he saw a scorpion that fell down into the river and it was drowning. So he reached his hand in and it stung him. You know, the scorpion stung him on his hand, and he picked it up and put it on the side, and the passerby watched him. As the scorpion walked into the water again, he picked it up again. It stung him again. And he put it down, and the passerby said, excuse me, sir. He goes, but I see that the scorpion keeps stinging you. He says, why on earth would you pick that creature up? He says, it's man's dharma to save. He says, it's a scorpion's dharma to sting. Isn't that nice? You know, because that's the thing, like human beings are, I think our responsibility on this earth is to, you know, you can never do good if you're clouded in ignorance, because your consciousness is only thinking about yourself, you see, and you can't help anyone else if you only think about yourself. See, that's the whole point of the spiritual life. We have to expand our consciousness to higher states where we're not the only thing that's driving or motivating our life. It's like, because like you said, you know, look at what happened in COVID. Everyone's going around buying all the toilet paper, like everything. It's like, what, you know, it was all driven by fear, you know, and look what they used to do back in the olden days when there was, like, for example, two armies fighting against each other. They would stick heads on the ramparts, right, or throw the heads over. Why? Because they get them into a sympathetic state of fight or flight, and they paralyze. It freezes them. They're easy to control. And that's what's going on with the society today, you see. So I think there's only a few people that are maybe a bit free from this kind of scenario, but more people are waking up. But overall, you see, the personal self or the ego is suffering because it's rooted in selfishness. the impersonal self or spirit is peace because it's rooted in selflessness. It's like do good for the other. I shouldn't judge why. You know, it's interesting because a while ago I met this lady, this homeless lady that I didn't know that she was homeless. So at Whole Foods, I sit down there, do a little work on my computer, see this old lady sitting there, and I got chatting to her. And I didn't know that she was homeless. She looked totally like clean and all that kind of stuff and whatever. And I talked to her, said bye. Met her another time, said hi, how you doing? Good, all good. So the next time I saw her, she was pushing a cart full of junk, and I was like, hey, where do you stay? She's like, oh, I sleep in the back of the toilets around the back of Whole Foods. And I was like, you're kidding me. She's like 74 years old. Anyway, so, you know, got to know her, got friendly with her, spoken to her so many times. I saw her one day and she was like, oh, my hip's really killing me and it's really hurting me. She's sleeping on the cold floor in like December or January. So I'm like, oh, I'll put her in a hotel for a few nights. You know, it's the sort of the least I could do. And I thought, well, how can I help you deeper than this? The reason I share this story is because I was just like overwhelmed by the responses from people that I got. Like it blew me away. So I was like, well, she goes, well, you know, she tried the shelters and it's really hard and she's old, so they won't really give her a place because they want to put people in that are 35 years old, they can get them working and she's too old and that kind of stuff. So I was like, why don't we get you a car? So I started a GoFundMe page and I asked like obviously people to help GoFund it with me because obviously I can't afford to pay for all of it. Long story short, I spoke to like quite a few like quote unquote religious people and they were like, what's she done to get in that situation? Why is she there? This, that, and the other. It's like, why are you asking these questions about this old woman? She's like, she's stuck basically right now. She's in her 70s. She's sleeping on the ground. And it just cracked me up because, you know, people that claim to be good religious people that are supposed to be helpful didn't help at all. And they didn't even give me any money. And I was like, wow. And these people, they're living in, really $30 million houses. You know what I mean? Like crazy stuff like that. And anyway, long story short, I did end up raising a little bit of money, and we got her a car, and it's been really good for her. But again, you see, it's interesting, like this whole kind of selfish notion that basically the religion still pushes out there. And that's the problem I think with a lot of this society today.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
I don't know his exact name or the exact story behind it, but there's that huge kind of hurricane in Texas a while back, and that like rich pastor, he preaches like wealth, like God, if you pray to God, he gives you wealth or like financial wealth.
Joel
Joel,
Osteen, that guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't let people in his church. I,
Oh
I,
my God.
I don't remember the story or the exact background, but apparently there were people in his church and he kind of like locked it up that were trying to use it as shelter, you
Oh
know?
my God.
But I found
Yeah.
that interesting. Of course, you know, there's going to be damage to the property when you let a whole bunch of people in a frantic state in there, and some people are going to steal and stuff of that sort. But I found it interesting, you know, to reinforce your idea of
Yeah.
like this is the plastic love I was
Yeah.
referring to in Seattle, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly.
Everyone likes to be morally right if it's convenient for them, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
But if it's inconvenient, then they're like, oh, you're on your own. Actually, it's your fault. It's your responsibility. You're an adult or whatever. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I like to term it like I got it from Stefan, plastic love. It's
Plastic love.
fake.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could feel it from a million miles away. You know what I
I
mean?
know.
That those fake hugs, those fake smiles, those fake, like, we love you. And people fall for it. It's so cheesy, man.
I know.
And people fall, you could totally see it and sense it from like a trillion miles away. Even a blind man can see it, you know? But it's like people love the sugar, man. They love to be sugar coated, you know?
Again, it's like most of the thing that I see. So one of the things that I've become really frustrated about is actually the spiritual path, because I do feel that people need a really deep understanding of what this construct is. And I feel that the only real deep lasting solution to our problem, the only solution is actually knowledge. And it's not external knowledge. It's not knowledge about out there. Like it's good, don't get me wrong, you know, to know how to eat healthy and you know, the body's the temple and all this, that and the other. But the knowledge that really sets us free is actually the internal knowledge that you were speaking about. It's that narrative that's running inside ourselves that actually makes us miserable. You know, so if we can start questioning some of those things, this is another term too. It's called vichara. So vichara, it means self-inquiry. So like that's something I think for your practice, what you should do a little bit is like, you know, you're a disciplined guy, wake up in the morning, start your morning routine, like wash your hands, do a little bit of inquiry, sit there with your legs crossed on the ground and ask, sit there and ask, who or what am I? And just sit on that thought. And you'll be amazed what it reveals to you. The longer, and this is the thing. So years ago, it came to me in a meditation to actually, for a while, I had to give up meat. And I didn't really know why, but and I've always been a massive meat eater. So like meat's been a big part of my life for so long, and having my business like it was before. I used to have a nutrition company back in Australia called Primal Nutrition and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I hear, give up eating meat. I was like, well, why? But the thing is that meditation really is a practice, but it's an art of calming the body and stilling the mind so you can transcend it, because you're not either of them actually. The problem is that when you put meat in and like dead animals, it's kind of like lively energy that it's really hard to get yourself to be calm and still. So like my meditation practice since I've been eating meat again is not really very good. It's harder for me to get deeply relaxed. So, but what I always do to like make myself get relaxed is I do some pranayamas. So like, for example, like I would do some nostril breathing. I would breathe in through this nostril. So you'd put your thumb on your right nostril and breathe through your left nostril. And then you'd use your ring finger to close your left nostril and you'd breathe out your right nostril. Alternate that and do that like 20 times. That would be one thing that I would do. And then I would do some yoga nidra. So you would do that, and what this does is it basically balances the masculine and feminine energies inside you and lets your body get more calm. Then after that, what I would do is I would sit there and I would literally, obviously my eyes would be closed, and I would just try and focus on the energy as it moves around in my body. So like, for example, I would focus on the energy in my hands. I would focus on the energy in my feet. I would focus on the energy in my stomach area, my heart, my head. And I would just do that until I'm extremely relaxed, until I'm not having any thoughts anymore. I'm just conscious, I'm just present right there in the feeling of. And then once the body and mind are still, you can somehow transcend that, and you can basically get into that space that you're talking about, which is more sort of clarity. But it's a practice, it's difficult to do. And
Yeah.
actually, I think a book you would really benefit from is called Toward the Goal Supreme. You should write that one down. It's called the Paramantha Prasanga. And it's the reason why it's such a great book is it's actually not affiliated with any religion. Like, it's not Christian, it's not Jew, it's not Hindu. I mean, it's written by a Advaita Vedanta, it's written by Hindu, but it's not like, it's just practice based. It's just like fiercely about do this is the outcome of what you get, and that's why it's really good.
Yeah. No, self-inquiry has been an interesting topic. I actually got started on this topic way back in 2006 from my
Wow.
professor, Donald Hoffman.
Okay.
He created the interface that he's actually like very popular online now. He's been on like the Lex Friedman podcast and everything, but he got me to inquire about the self like way back when.
Wow. Okay,
And
that's
I always
great.
found it like for me personally, like what I found for my practice is like, you're nothing conceivable or perceivable, you know?
So
Who are you? Nothing conceivable or perceivable. Like I always go back to that simple question of like when people say a common one is like, oh, I changed my mind, you know? Or rather more accurately to say it is I changed the mind, because you're not the content of the mind, right? And then you
true.
ask them like, who's changing the mind, you know? And then you ask the next question of like, oh, turn your attention inward and observe what's there. It's nothing. But that is who you are, quote unquote, you know? And try to describe it. I think it's like basically understanding that it's like trying to get a dog to learn calculus. I don't care how good of a professor you are or teacher you are, you're not going to be able to do that. And it's the same, the human mind is too limited. You know what I mean? To understand reality for what it is. I mean, I'm getting this from even Dr. Hoffman. His example is the famous one is like when you see on your desktop, the Word document, the Word icon, you know, for the Word document, so you can type reports and whatever, and it's like a blue W. But if you look at the HTML code, it looks nothing like that. But that is how the program looks. but the programmers obviously dumb it down, make it user friendly, like a user interface. So like just a normal person can use it and type a report and submit the report and then get a paycheck. Why? Oh, just to survive better. You know, again, goes full circle, just back to survival. And there's nothing really fancy or magical about it. You know what I mean? When you break it down in that sense. And you also mentioned, like, on various occasions, you know, the prison of the mind. And I do think one of the biggest prisons of the mind is people over identifying with their thoughts as their own.
So
But an interesting
true.
question, very common sense question, and I know, like, most people, it's going to go over their head. It's like, oh, this is going to help me make my paycheck better or bigger or whatever. And interesting question is, um, notice that a thought arises, and it could be anything, but you only notice it after the fact, never before. Even when you make yourself think of a thought, you notice you making yourself think of that thought happened. You notice yourself, the conscious perception of that thought only happened after the fact, like never before. You know
So
what I mean?
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, that's like literally the foundation of your whole entire life experience. But no one ever questions it. Like, oh, not no one. Almost nobody ever questions it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you sit down and think about it, it's like all the ideas about yourself, your false self at least,
Hmm.
come from there. And people like over identify that as that is them. You know what I mean?
It's
And
hard.
they base
It's
all of their decisions off of that and their ideals. And now they're worried about measles. And I'm like, dude, you're like coming off as a retard, like literally retarded. You know,
dude.
I
The
know
thing
you're
is, I
kinder
think
with your words, Warren,
you
but someone has to come out and say it, you know?
Eugene. I think the thing is for you, dude, as well though, is that, for example, like, you've always lived quite a simple, like, aesthetic life, and the more simple, the more, like, outwardly simple you are, the more inwardly simple you are, and the more simple you are, the higher things you understand. Because you see, when you clutter yourself up with all this crap, there's too much noise that keeps you locked into this kind of ignorance that you can't really see or perceive what's really real. And I think it always correlates to, again, it correlates to attachment. And I think for you, you know, I don't know all your whole story, but I do know, you know, brief glimmers of it. It sounds to me that you had quite a simple kind of upbringing, and that didn't give you too many attachments either. I see, for example, this is quite interesting. I have a friend of mine, and you know, he's got a lot of attachments, and you see a lot of his problems are coming from all of those attachments. So associations to this, what college I went to, what school I went to, my family's this, my family's that. You see, it's all false. It's all false identification, or identification with this false self, that keeps this, I call it keeping the nightmare alive. You see, and it's like, it's basically, it's not really a dream, it's really a nightmare. The funny thing is, it's like, what is reality? And that's the question, is like, well, what is the reality? It's the reality that we perceive. It's such a hard thing to really explain, but the fact of the matter is that there's nothing else for us than our mind of what we perceive something. And in this reality, really, you could almost say that nothing is really true. But why? Because everything is dependent upon something else. Why? Because you can't say, right, what ugly is unless you can have it backed against beauty. You know what I mean? You can't say what good is unless it's backed against bad, and that means it's dependent. Therefore, it's unreal in the Sanskrit way of viewing philosophy. You know what you said as well about that essence that the scientist said about Hoffer. He said about, you know, the mind. You can't really say what it is. Well, that's exactly what they say God is, actually. In Hinduism, they say the only scripture that's never been defiled is Brahma, because whatever you can say it is, isn't
Isn't
that.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
and
it comes
and
from the mind.
yeah, and what do they call God in Judaism? They call God Ha-Shem. Ha means the, Shem means name. So it's literally the name. And they say anything that you can think of that is, isn't. So you can't, you know, because it's just like, it's beyond all conceptualization.
Yeah.
So
I guess the journey is to know yourself. You have to first know who you are not, right?
yeah,
And you can never know who you really are. You can just know who you are, like, not. And anything conceivable or perceivable is not it, right? Because it comes from the content of the mind, which is a distant abstraction of reality. You know, like, oh, you look at the books in the back, they're made out of the same atoms you're made out of.
exactly.
you know,
Yes, yes,
like all the same
exactly.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
But the mind is kind of like creates duality where non-duality exists, to help you to do to what? Survive better. I know it sounds so simple and stupid, but
I
really it
know.
just comes down to that. Once you
It's
take away all the fluff in the marketing,
yeah,
that's it. I mean, it's at least for me, like really that simple. And you touched on a few things. I think um, Western propaganda has done an amazing job at getting people to think what isn't important is important,
right.
and what is important isn't important. You know what I mean?
So
And
true.
we touched on food in the beginning, and I find it like, just to kind of simplify this topic, it's like, look how many the average American spends like $8,000 to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses. No problem. Like without even questioning it for 1 second. Like non-essential expenses being like eating out, alcohol, the new iPhone, it's like I
Right,
have type 2 diabetes, but I'm not going to get treatment for that because it's too expensive. But this $1,200 iPhone, oh, I definitely need that because that's going to improve my quality of life somehow.
right.
And without question. And even look at this like stupid egg price hikes, which I'm sure it didn't affect you because you got your own eggs there in the background. But people are like, oh, it's like $8 to $10, But they're okay with paying $5 for a cup of coffee that's production cost is like 10 cents. You know what I mean?
So
No
true.
questions asked, like every day.
Yeah,
And it's like all organic 2,000 calorie diet for like a normal sized person. It's like 6,000 a year. Way too
wow,
expensive.
wow,
But
wow.
wait,
Yeah,
$8,000 to $16,000 a year for bullshit. No, not too expensive. Actually, priced perfectly right. You know what I mean? Just to give you an idea of how
yeah,
distorted people's core values are. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like
Uh,
allocating so much energy to so much capitalistic bullshit
yeah,
that like serves literally no lasting change. Yes, it provides you sugar highs. There's no argument there, but that's it. Just sugar highs at best. Going to have a quick spike of happiness and then back to your normalized life of normal mental and physical illness to the nth degree. I can't believe like now summer's coming around. Like how many like obese and medically drugged out Americans are you going to see throwing down like 3 to 5K for a European trip for like 1 week? No questions
right,
asked. And for
right.
what? You come back and it's like you're still obese, miserable, and you're still at the job you hate and the environment that's leading to all this misery, internal and external environment. And they're like, no problem. Threw that money down, no problem. But then you tell them, hey, spend like 6,000 a year on an all organic diet. Oh, too expensive. I'm
Mhm.
like, dude,
Yeah,
this is why you're full of misery, obesity. This is like a mind virus,
right,
one
right.
sample of a mind
Yeah.
virus
Well,
that's leading to behaviors that are leading to the deterioration of the biological body.
yeah, well, what you said as well, I think it's like there's nefarious players in this game. It's like the Watergate scandal with cigarettes, you know what I mean? Because those two guys were trying to prove that cigarettes were bad at the time. Before that, they were like accepted to be healthy. It was like a healthy kind of like tonic or whatever for your nerves. Well, now it's the same thing with sugar. You can't like the concept of lobbying in America. It just blows my mind how it all works. You know, like these lobbyists, they used to work for these agencies or these companies,
Mm-hmm.
and then they leave, and then they go get public office, and then they get basically they're all lawyers, and then they write the laws, and then they basically make sure that they protect the interests of the people that they care about. And for example, some people in the government are there are some good people in the government, and they said, you know, this lobbying thing is is terrible. You know, we can't have so much sugar going on, and we need to reduce the amount of sugar that's allowed in the diet. The sugar lobbyist said, try and take it out. Try, I dare you to take it. We'll take all your funding, millions and millions of dollars. And they said, all right, we'll leave it exactly as it is. So what's actually interesting right now is I've started my own supplement company, and the company is all about basically it's all about true health, right? Trying to give people what they actually need to serve proper health. And the problem that we're seeing today is like huge amounts of depression, huge amounts of anxiety. You know, we're seeing ADD, ADHD. We're seeing 17 kids in America, teenagers, take their lives every single day. And this is really the problem that I'm trying to solve with what I have, because all of these problems are related to brain chemistry issues, and brain chemicals that are all made from, as we spoke about earlier, they're made from essential amino acids. So, for example, serotonin, the feel-good hormone, it's made from tryptophan. Dopamine that makes you focus, it's made from phenylalanine and tyrosine. So these are what you get when you eat protein. Today, these kids, they do not want to eat anything like that. They only want to eat bread, crackers, cake, candy, soda, pizza, and all of it lacks amino acids. So I was like, I had this one client call me up. He was like, please help my son. He's so depressed. He's so anxious. He's failing all his classes at school. He's failing his classes. He's failing all his sports. He's not interacting. He never talks to us. And I was like, well, let's look at his diet. And as soon as I looked at his diet, what did he eat? He just only ate sugar. That was it. So what happens when you eat sugar? You see, what's happened is it's not all of this. The point I'm trying to say here is it's all nefarious and it's all been done tactfully. Like these corporations, they know what happens when you combine social media, screen use with dopamine reward and also sugar. You got a recipe for disaster. And that's where these kids are today. You go to the doctor doesn't say, hey, you should really try and exercise, live a healthy diet, take out, the sugar, work on your gut health, remove gluten, all this kind of stuff. They just go, here you go, take Ritalin, take Adderall. How's that going to help? Put the stimulant in there for them. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So I came up with the concept of, well, these kids, they all want to eat candy, they want to eat sweet things, but what they really need are amino acids to fuel their brain chemicals. So that's what I went ahead and did and formulated a product that's called Awesome Everyday that has 19 essential vitamins and minerals, 55 organic whole fruits and vegetables, superfoods like functional mushrooms, but also all 9 EAAs that makes the brain chemicals. So like I would say it's really been a tactful thing that in a lot of collusion between these different interests. For example, social media, big telecom, and also the sugar industry. They know exactly what it's doing to us, but they don't care. Like Pepsi. How long has Pepsi and Coca-Cola known about all this junk, about these foods? Right? How long have they known about seed oils and all this kind of stuff? They've known for so long. They're scientists and they're formulators. They know, but they don't care because it's all about the bottom line. And then what happens in the end, right? Well, now that the public interest is for healthier alternatives and seed oils are on the radar, and so like these sugars, guess what happens? Pepsi buy them out. Did you see Poppy got bought the other day for $1.9 billion?
No, I don't keep up with ag
So yeah, that's
politics
kind of like the
anymore.
world that I'm playing in right now. But yeah, Poppy, they're like a healthy soda type deal. It's like apple cider
Oh, okay.
vinegar.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that brand. Yes.
You know that brand?
Okay.
So Pepsi just bought them for $1.9 billion. Point is, though, is that they don't care about our health. It's not that they care. It's that they can see that this is becoming a trend now.
Yeah.
So they're jumping on the back of that bandwagon and making sure that they take market share and all that kind of stuff. But I would say that with all this stuff that's going on, with the deterioration of our health and all these things, I would say, yes, everyone must take ownership for their own, problems. But the power of sugar, it hijacks the mind, completely hijacks it, because of all those mechanisms that you talk about, how we've evolved to have. Like for example, dopamine is there so that we can basically survive. It's that reward mechanism is a survival mechanism, and by them putting sugar in so many things, it hijacks that reward mechanism. So we keep chasing it, and it gives them more money, and it makes us sick. So that's basically what I think about that.
Yeah, and for the listeners, you guys, I mean, think about it this way. It's easy to understand. What Warren's saying is 100% legit. Like everything, all 13 of your systems in the human body are made out of food. Even like the sperm and egg you came from were made out of food at 1.2, And it took food to sustain your life, all of your life. So don't be surprised if you're sourcing poor quality food for the deal, quote unquote, you're not getting a deal. Remember that close to 80% of personal bankruptcies in the US are due to health issues. 80%, which is crazy.
Wow.
80% of bankruptcies
Wow.
are due to health issues.
So
and
Eugene,
now,
explain that. What do you mean by that? So like someone had a health issue that caused them to have to go to the hospital or something that they couldn't pay for it?
it could be something as simple as that. I mean, like Robert Kawasaki said, the average American has like $900 in their bank account. Dude, you can't even get like a splinter taken out of your finger for $900 at a local hospital. It's even going to cost you like a couple grand. So it's like, they break a leg or have some chronic gut issues or stuff. I mean, you're looking at like 15, 20K, like right away. You know what I mean? And that's enough. That's it. I mean, how are you going to go from having 900 in your bank account to coming up with like 20K out of nowhere? And that's it. You got to file bankruptcy. You know what I mean? Or something of that sort. It could be just that simple. And you got to look at, 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically sick right now. So if you're kind of looking at the forecast, you got 9 out of 10 Americans that are like not only metabolically sick, I would say also mentally sick, because you can't be physically sick and mentally well, and vice versa, because they're just one in the same system.
Yep.
And then eight out of 10 bankruptcies are due to health issues. It's like, what kind of deal are these people thinking they're getting? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. That's why, like, a lot of times it's just so silly when I hear people say, uh, and it's just this mind virus, you know, when I hear people say, oh, I don't have money for organic food, or, I mean, dude, you don't even need a gym, but even if you want a gym, Planet Fitness is $10. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's more, it's not a money issue. It's a core values issue that goes back to a mind virus issue. Unfortunately, these people that aren't, you know, thinking for themselves, like, you can read the book by The Crowd by Gustavo Lambon, and you'll see crowd psychology is so easy to manipulate because it's so emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone that's
Right.
very emotional is very easy to manipulate and kind of steer in the direction you want them to be steered. And unfortunately, they've been brainwashed to believe that, again, like I said, what's not important is important, and what is important is not important. You know what I mean? And when you talk to them, yeah, they'll say, yeah, your mental and physical health is important, but talk is cheap. Like, what are your actions? Where is your money going? And if you look at where their money's going and what their actions look like, their mental and physical health is not important. Or they have such a distorted, sick perception of what mental and physical health even is. Like, oh yeah, I'm mentally healthy because I take an antidepressant. I'm like, no, dude,
Yeah.
you're like, you're so dissociated and so gone.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So gone. And that mind virus is so strong in this individual. And it's like so abundant these days. I mean, I think I read an article saying like 35% of females in the US are now on psychiatric drugs of one sort or another. And that's just the ones, I presume, that had enough money to get a diagnosis. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But if you don't count the difference, I presume it's around 50%. And these women are going to have kids one day, and they're
Right.
going to pass this mind virus down to their kids. You know, and the average kid is born with, in a metropolitan area in the US, born with 233 trace amounts of 233 different chemicals, industrial chemicals in their bloodstream already, industrial and agricultural chemicals,
Wild.
which is startling. So when you combine all these things, I mean, it's like a disaster across the board. And it's so common, it's normal now. That's the sickest part of all.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that is the saddest part of all, is people aren't even blinking an eye to it. They're like, this is what life is. I'm like, dude, this is not what life is. This is like what a nightmare and disaster is.
So true.
You know what I mean? And unfortunately, the central nervous system is deceiving. You'll get used to anything it's exposed to for long enough, you know? Kind of like that frog in slowly boiling water. You know what I mean? It doesn't notice the water is getting hotter and hotter. It just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything. It's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And it's the other sick part about it is once you try to kind of collapse this system, the people that are hopelessly dependent on it and actually dying from it and living a miserable life, they defend that system. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like,
100%.
remember in The Matrix 1 when Morpheus was taking Neo through that walk with the lady in the red dress, you know, that scene. And he's like, these people are glued into the system and they're so hopelessly dependent on it. They'll even try to kill you if you try to take the system down, which is just using them and milking them for just bullshit purchases. I mean, if you look at materialism, like 98% of it is just like bullshit, not even necessary whatsoever. It's just like hedonistic, entertainment kind of oriented behavior. You know what I mean? It's not even, serves no real utility, but yet depletes the world's resources, increases obesity, distracts people from their real message in life, you know, from real meaning in life, and stuff of that sort. So um,
Eugene, you
I
got a
know
lot of good.
I sound negative, but someone's got to say it, damn
No,
it, you know?
dude, it's so funny. And Nowcat there, she made an interesting point as well. She's saying that the corruption of the insurance companies, it's that is another topic that is crazy, isn't it? You know, like you pay this expensive amount of insurance for, you know, we don't go to the doctor. So like the only thing I think a doctor's valid for here personally is like if you break your leg, you better go to the doctor and get it fixed. Or if you have a car accident, that's about it. Other than that, you just don't go to the doctor. And you can really touch upon, like, for example, I love Hippocrates, his kind of philosophy of what health is. He says that, you know, let food be thy medicine, let medicine be thy food, but to eat when you're sick is to feed sickness. So he says that sickness doesn't come on us from, you know, random. He says it comes from small sins, small daily sins against nature. He says when enough
Mhm.
sins have been accumulated, he goes, it'll result in disease. And he says that, you know, it's all about an organism, the definition of health.
Warren, I don't mean to interrupt you. Keep talking. Now I got to plug my phone in, okay? But keep
Yeah, okay, go
talking.
on,
I
go.
can still hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But his definition of health is an organism that's living in harmony with nature, and his definition of sickness or disease is an organism that's living in disharmony or disbalance. And he says, and this is the thing too. So it's really, I refer to this quite a lot with, you know, having young kids too, because they get little colds and little things going on, this, that, and the other. And again, it comes down to like Chinese medicine. It's like we have to bring the body into balance. He says that if you're type, he would say phlegmatic, like if you're in a mucousy condition, because the first thing that you should do is counter that mucus, that phlegm, with citrus foods. He says you always try with food first before you try with anything else. He says the physician's job is basically to try with foods first. If you can't get any success with foods, then you can move on to some kind of a medicine, basically. And you're just trying to counter the body and bring it back into balance. The problem is that they have us totally. So we can go like down this rabbit holes and rabbit holes with conspiracy theories, but you know, like for example, they know that blue light is really bad for us, and it basically messes up our circadian rhythm. Well, all day long these days, we're staring at screens that are blue light. And what about the geoengineering in the sky, where they spray out all these heavy metals like aluminum or barium or whatever they're spraying in the zinc oxide? They spray that. Well, I'd actually looked on ChatGPT the day. I think, oh, I've got a revelation right here. So I typed it in. I was like, what happens when you get metals and in fine particulate matter and you have sunlight coming through it? It says it turns it into blue light. Can you believe that? So they're basically, what they're doing to us is they spray that crap over us all the time, and it's distorting our reality. Basically, it's like we're swamped, like you can't escape it almost in a way. So it's like if people aren't having some kind of, the point is that there's no truth in these people, and they're so far from the truth. Like if you smack them with it in the face, they turn around like you said and they want to kill you. But again, that's where it's interesting again, because like I go back to the teachings of Jesus a lot when he said, don't cast your pearls before swine or give what's holy to dogs. He says, lest they turn around or he says, lest they trample them under your feet or they turn around and tear you to pieces. So you see, like, you try and give people wisdom and say, hey, this is not really that good for you. And they're like, don't touch it. I want it, you know, because they're so gone in the system. And it's like, it's even like, I love the Matrix because it's just full of metaphors of the spiritual life and life in general. And he goes, when they're about to wake Neo up and he's like in his 30s or whatever, they're like, it's dangerous. When you wake someone up when he's this old, he could die, you know, and that's really like ego death. They're attached to all their things. They think this is their reality. And if you wake someone up to a different reality, it's going to kill them, you know? And again, that's really what this is, you know, but they've tactfully done it in so many ways, with whether it's the phone, whether it's the sugar, whether it's the fake medicine that they pushed on us, whether it's the geoengineering, whether it's the pesticides, whether it's the glyphosate. Like, what is Monsanto's first product? Agent Orange. Why are they producing all the corn, wheat, and soy in the world right now? Well, not all of it, but a lot of it, and you know, having it patented. So they're producing the food that we eat, that mostly poor people eat, which is obviously really unfortunate. But their first product was Agent Orange, which obviously we know what that did in Vietnam War. It made everyone deformed and killed everyone. It's a pesticide. So they're a pesticide company that's now responsible for making all of our food Roundup resistant. And obviously, you know what glyphosate does to the gut lining and all that kind of stuff. So we've got this it's like a perfect storm of all these things going on. And I feel like if you don't have that awareness there, you're basically going to be swept away and you're basically ruined. And that's where most people are. And it's like, I guess it's like, what did Caesar do? Caesar's like, let's give them the games, keep them distracted, you know, because if we take away the games, they'll start looking for something deeper and they'll start questioning this narrative. And that's what this whole construct is based on, these little fancies.
Yeah, I guess my honest question are people that are like on the fence about like staying quote unquote in the matrix. Okay, like for example, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, like if I actually live life sustainably, I'll have to give up this good lifestyle, you know what I mean, or whatever. And I'm like, what freaking good lifestyle are you talking about, man? You're obese, you're miserable, your wife hasn't found you attractive in like who knows how long, you know, you're on like 3 different medical drugs and you're not even pushing 40 yet. It's like, what kind of quality lifestyle are you losing?
It's crazy.
This is like the definition of like prison of the mind, you know, like normalized misery. And it costs so much. It's expensive. It's an expensive form of misery, you know? And I don't know, it's just weird. It's like people are really talking to this, like, I just need this one more thing and complete, you know what I mean? This one more job, one more thing, and I'll be in like a state of nirvana or whatever, you know? It never happens. It never happens. And then people get to their 50s and 60s, and it's like, that's it. Now you have more years behind you than in front of you, you know what I mean? And they still keep going at it. Like, how many people have you seen had a heart attack and they still don't change? Probably like 60% of people still don't change literally anything, you know what I mean? They just take a high blood pressure med going forward. And I know you're a parent now, but it's the saddest part for me is like they have kids and they teach their kids to be like the same exact way, because kids, like 80% of what they learn from you, they learn by observing you. Not
Exactly.
all of them, you know? So if you're living life unsustainably on a bunch of medical drugs, you know, you're like really overweight, eating shit food, like your kids are going to do the same thing. And you know, that's not making you happy. It's 100% not going to make you, know what I mean? Um, and another thing is kind of like, uh, during the whole like shutdown thing, I found it just so funny because like my business got attacked on a few occasions. I didn't even tell people not to get vaccinated. That's just up to them. I just went and lived in Big Bear uh, when all that happened. I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. I would wake up in the morning. I would train with a few kettlebells that Larice gave me because all the gyms were closed. She was nice enough to give me a few kettlebells from the gym. And then I would just go run to the river, take a dip in the river, run back. I ordered my meats from like AZ grass raised beef. It's like an AGA certified ranch. I would just eat that. And they had luckily some organic food in the area too, like fruit, produce rather. And then I had a sauna in the house too. And I would do like sauna almost every day and a hot bath, you know. And I'm like, this is just what I'm doing. And people attack me, dude. They're like, oh, you're like anti-science.
Oh,
and dude, you're Jack, like thriving.
yeah.
And I have these people that are like medically drugged out of their mind with like their droopy faces and like overweight bodies trying to tell me like I'm doing something dangerous. I'm like, dude, you're worried about a virus that has like a 0.005% chance of killing you, but you have a 50% chance of dying from cancer by being this overweight. And you're worried about that. You know what I mean? Or the fact that 1 out of every 3 Americans die from heart disease. And they're not worried about that. I'm like, dude, wake the fuck up, retard.
It's
you know?
so true.
You know, some people, Warren, I don't like being so aggressive, but some people, they just need to get slapped in the face to wake up. It needs to be, because they're not going to do it nice and sugar-coated way, because they've been sugar-coated so long, which is why they've reached this level of pathology in life. Because there's something going on, some kind of serious cognitive dissonance going on that justifies that repeated behavior that leads to that excessive weight, all that disease, all that misery. There's some kind of story they're spinning. Again, some kind of mind that lets this be continuous. It's not genetics. A lot of them are, I'm genetic. I'm overweight because I'm genetic. It's like, dude, all the respect for POW. I don't mean this in a negative way. It's like, were there any overweight people in concentration camps?
No.
Like, I didn't see a single overweight. I'm sure some of them had the fat gene. I'm sure issues, stressed out of their mind, overworked, underworked, whatever. Not a single overweight person. But in America, you got like almost half the kids in America are now almost obese. It's not genetics, dude. The thing is, it's like a mind virus passed from one parent to a kid to a parent, et cetera, you know?
It is. But also, you know, obviously about like the hormones like leptin and the hormones ghrelin, it gets massively dysregulated. That's the other thing too. So leptin is when leptin's high, it should tell you that you're full. When leptin's low, it should tell you that you should eat food, you should find food. The problem is, so they found this in like the 1980s. It was one of the later hormones that they found. And they found it by looking at this mouse called an obob mouse. And they found that this one certain type of mouse, it just kept eating and eating and eating. And as long as there was food in front of it, it would keep eating. Whereas the other mice, they would only eat what they needed and they would carry on. So they were like, well, let's test this mouse. So they tested the mouse and they found it was missing this one hormone, which they named leptin. So like, this is going to be the greatest medical discovery. We're going to cure obesity in one single swoop. So what they started doing was administering leptin to fat people, to obese people, and it didn't work. because they were leptin resistant, just like you're already insulin resistant. Do you see what I mean? So now leptin's message is never getting in. Like, honestly, like, it's not rocket science, is it, Eugene? It's like, it's nature. Like your body, our bodies are a homeostatic control center. It's kind of like a car's diagnostic tool. If you got a pain in your foot, well, what happened? It's trying to tell something has just happened to you that you've got a pain there, right? It's displaying to you something's going wrong. If you're fat and you have no energy, something's going on that your body's trying to tell you, hey, alarm bell's ringing. If you're getting pain in your chest, there's an alarm bell ringing. The reality of it is, though, is that people have gotten so leptin resistant now that even though they go and look in the mirror and they see themselves as 300 pounds and really fat, their body is no longer telling them that they're not hungry, because they cannot overcome the urge, because leptin's so dysregulated. So now it's just a pure thing of like mind and will. They have to overcome the hard wiring that's all gone totally awry. There's like someone that, for example, like, you see some guys that are in their 60s and they're in perfect shape, probably like Czech, and it's like it's seamless and it's easy for him. Why? His hormones are all functioning properly. Why? Because he's a Homo sapien that's basically living in harmony with nature. He's going out in the fresh air when there's fresh air. He's getting the sunshine on his skin. And this is the other thing too. It's if you're cooped up in an office all day long and you're staring at blue screens, I'm telling you now, it does something to your psychology. It does something to your mindset. It does, if you don't work a corporate job, so you're lucky. And again, so I did work a corporate job for a few years. A few years ago, I started working in like the construction industry, doing like the sales on the back end, and that gave me a really good insight into how difficult it is for like someone that works in like corporate America, because I've never done that my whole life. I've worked in health and fitness like you, and we make up our own schedules, and we can go and sit in the sun and read our book at lunchtime and go for a swim and all that. All that is done when you work in an office. Like you got to be there at 7 a.m. and you're grinding and you're looking at a screen and it's fucking miserable. It's absolutely miserable. So I have a lot more sympathy for these people, because quite honestly, if you're like suffering all day long and you're staring at screens, when you get out of being at work, you want some fucking pleasure, and that's the point, you see. That's where all these people are. You're not supposed to be sedentary sitting down. Our ancestors have never done this. We were nomadic hunter-gatherers. We would walk around, we would forage, we would hunt. And, all of these mechanisms inside, again, we're all looking at everything from, they know the root cause of all of this. And it is an easy fix. You got to bring the body back into harmony. The only way you can bring the body back into harmony is you need to give it the conditions that it evolved and existed with since the beginning of time. That's it. And if it's not like natural, if it didn't run or swim, you shouldn't really have it. If there's sunshine, they tell you that the sunshine is wrong. But you got to slather all this crap on you, right? We all know that this is all coming out to be absolute BS right now. So in every kind of way, I think they've attacked us along this for quite a few years. And I feel like maybe you see it a bit more harshly. I agree with what you're saying, everything that you're saying, but I see it maybe in a bit more of a sympathetic sense, because I do see like my body composition got worse. I also basically, after having 2 kids, it's like, so this is the thing. It's a spiritual thing as well, because when we come onto this earth, we're inherently selfish. What's the purpose of getting married? It teaches you to be a bit more selfless. When you have kids, it teaches you to be even more selfless, because before, to be honest with you, I lived my life how I wanted to live. I went where I wanted to go. I flew to where I wanted to do. I had dinners that I wanted to. I chilled out. I walked my dog on the beach. I went for a swim. I lifted with my mates. It was all about me, basically. All of a sudden, you got a wife. Now you're sharing a house. Now you're sharing a bathroom. Now all of a sudden, you got kids, and it keeps racking up. It's like your plate's full. It's about to break. You know what I mean? And that ties into what Robert Kiyosaki's saying. It's like, if you've got like, I'm the head of the house. My wife doesn't work, so I have all the responsibility of paying for all the bills and making sure that we all, we order our all of our seafood. We get from Great Seafood Alaska, so we only get wild salmon. I've given them wild caviar since they were young, grass-fed beef liver. We get our meat and our milk from the Amish farm. We do, the top things that I could possibly do. That costs a lot of money, doesn't it? You know what I mean? All of that to live in Southern California. You've got to be making at least 12 to 15 grand a month to be able to do that with a family, So you're looking at 150 to 200 grand a year. And it's doable, but that creates stress. And I think that's probably, again, that comes back to my sort of hypothesis of what it is that makes people sick, And there's a few things, like I said before, people are malnourished. So when someone longs for something, right, why is it that they're longing for it? It's because somewhere there's a lack. They lack deeply inside themselves. Put it like this: what's your favorite meal, Eugene? What would you love to eat? The most thing you love to eat?
Uh, Shit, I like to eat a lot of different food, man.
Okay.
Kind of putting me here, you know. I don't want to. Just to make it easy. I mean, I like steel cut oats with honey and some fruit.
Okay.
I really like.
Beautiful. Okay. So let's say, for example, you haven't eaten for 2 days. You fasted, intentionally fasted, and you told yourself that you're going to eat those steel cut oats, right? After you break your fast, that's the first thing that you're going to do to break your fast. How much do you want those oats? You want them a lot, right? Because you're really hungry. Now let's just say you just had a massive meal and you're totally full. Now someone offers you those oats. Do you want them? No. You have no need for it because you're already full. You've been satiated. You see, this is the problem, you see, because all of these people that are overweight, their hormones are out of balance and they can't make the brain chemicals that they need to feel satiated because the food is nutritionally devoid. The soil is not, they're not processing any, soil crop rotation. So there's no nutrients, my micronutrients in the food. And that's the whole point. So every system is basically carefully created in this country, I think, to make people consume more. Because if you're lacking internally, because this is the thing I say, like, for example, you can't make this up from nowhere. Like the body has to have nutrients. If they're, like, for example, there's three classes of nutrients that are considered to be essential nutrients. So there's essential fatty acids, there's essential amino acids, and there's vitamins and minerals. Like there's 9 essential amino acids that are essential, and there are 11 that are deemed as non-essential. So out of the 9 essential amino acids, your body can make the other 11. But if you don't have the 9, you can't make the other 11. So here's the point, you see. If someone is not consuming that, they can't make the other 11. They can't do lots of different biological and physiological processes of the body. And that's the point, you see. Our foods don't have it. So they can't make, for example, the right hormones. They can't make T3. They can't make T4. They can't make growth hormone. They can't make, for example, the catecholamines. They can't keep up with cortisol because it's all either made from fats or amino acids, basically. So I feel like that's where, realistically, I think the whole thing, the whole system needs to be brought down from top to bottom, doesn't it, really? But like then you say, you're going to get them turning around trying to kill you for it because you've called out the system that's flawed, but they're so attached to it.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I don't follow politics at all, so I don't know the nuance and detail of like what I'm saying here. It's just kind of like a brief clip.
Eugene, I lost your audio there. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. But there's like RFK, you know?
Right.
And he's like, oh, he's dangerous. I'm like, dude, I don't know exactly what he's doing, to be honest. I've heard a few of his clips. He seems to be like anti-over prescriptions, which I think is good, more like real health education, et cetera, et cetera. But like, I hear a lot of people like, oh, he's dangerous for society. I'm like, dude, like 9 out of 10 Americans are already metabolically sick. Like America is literally the most medically drugged out, the most obese, and the most miserable humans in the history of the human race. Like whatever is happening now is not working. It's not only not working, it's epically failing.
Mm-hmm.
Like step outside literally anywhere in America, literally anywhere you are. I see there's a bunch of people here. I'm sure they're in different states. It's on the weekend. Step out anywhere. 9 out of 10 people you run into are full of obesity, misery, and disease. You know, literally, easily 9 out of 10. Easy. And I'm being optimistic here. I'm in a good mood today. You know, I think a lot more, trust me. It's clearly not working. Come on, guys. I mean, just put like EDBD. I wish I could explain it more thoroughly, but I'm explaining it at such a basic level and it's so obvious. It doesn't need more explanation. But like the saying goes, I cannot show you anything if you refuse to open your eyes.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
What can I show you then? You're blind. You know,
That's
because
true.
most likely you've normalized that level of mental and physical pathology in your life.
What's interesting to me as well is, like this isn't something that's so important to you because obviously you don't have any kids. But when you do have kids, you start to really pay attention to kids' health. And you're like, what's going on right now with these trends? The CDC was saying in 1990 that 1 in 10,000 kids have autism. Today, they're saying that it's 1 in 23 or 1 in 26 that have autism. And, if you speak about this to anyone that's like, someone that's kind of more on the woke side, they'll say, oh, the diagnosis has gotten much better. They were underdiagnosing it before. It's like, no, you idiot. It's just, it literally was not there. There might have been like one kid in the village where you came from, like in England where I'm from, that was a little bit off, but that was about it. But now you're seeing like, obviously 1 in 23 or 1 in 30 kids are having these problems. And what I see is more interesting than that is even in the 1960s, I was saying 1 in 60,000 people had a food allergy. 1 in 60,000. And now it's 1 in 4. 1 in 4 kids have a food allergy right now. So that's why peanuts and everything are banned. So, I personally subscribe to the point of, you know, show me the science on these things. Let me see actual, really validated, peer-reviewed studies where you do, like, for example, say, for example, a vaccinated group versus an unvaccinated group. Let's see the data on that. Well, why did the CDC deny to give it to you? They won't do it. They've asked them for it so many times. But when you're seeing these terrible health rates and these terrible diseases going up, we've got to start questioning the narrative of what it is and what's why. So I think that's super important. And for me, it's really it's again, there's not one single thing, but there's lots of things that are all working together on this. It's like, what is the gut designed to do? Obviously, the gut's designed to mop up the nutrients from the food that you eat, break it down, and also keep out pathogens. So it's like basically going to absorb it in and stop it from getting in. Well, everyone's got a jacked up gut now. So if your gut's jacked up and you've got torn holes, it doesn't matter. Even if you're eating the best quality steak, you can't absorb the nutrients from it because your enterocytes are screwed up. So, but it's systematic because you look at it, if you follow the paper trail, who's one of the leading backers of Monsanto? Bill Gates. Why has he got his hand on all this? Why has he got all this agricultural farmland? It's like, it's such a wild thing. He's bought up most of the farmland in America right now. And why is he working with him to push on all these like sun dimming technologies and all this type of stuff? So you can see that there's a nefarious tone to all of it.
Well, I always say like sick people can't make healthy decisions or they wouldn't be sick to begin with.
Right,
You know?
right.
And yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't even know in the US that pesticides that they use to spray on your food are never even tested for safety as complete formulations, which is shocking to them. They never formulation. And they're spraying, tens of thousands of these different chemicals on your food all the time. Like I mentioned, an average newborn born in metropolitan areas, born with 233 trace amounts of 233 different industrial and agricultural chemicals in their bloodstream already.
Wow. That's crazy.
None of these chemicals are tested as complete formulations, but people are like, well, if it's at least in the US, well, if it's in the market, it's safe, But these are data-free assumptions. None of them are tested as a complete formulation, but that's how they're used in industry.
Right.
And one formulation, like in any agricultural crop season, you may use a couple dozen in that same season. And a lot of them have synergistic effects. When you combine two different ones, they make each other more potent and more dangerous, Right. None of that's tested for safety. And you have a lot of like very popular data influencers showing like, oh, look, it's safe, Don't worry about whether you buy organic or this, it's safe, it's the same.
Right.
And I messaged them, okay, where's the safety study? They're like, here. And I'm like, oh, this is just testing glyphosate. That's only one active ingredient in the entire formulation. It's a very small percentage of it. Like for instance, in Roundup, glyphosate, the active ingredient, it's weak. It's a barely good herbicide. It can't even kill weeds barely, And that's all that's tested for safety. But that's never used. They never just use glyphosate. They use the complete formulation of the entire product. And of course, it's like way more data at the point when you combine the active and inactive ingredients together. Then it's like you can breathe glyphosate on weeds and it ends up dying. That's how much more powerful it is. Could be
right.
More powerful. And a lot of these influencers, like, they just don't even know that. They don't even look deep enough into the studies. They're like, well, it's science. Dude, like, where's critical thinking here, man? Like,
thank God for people like you, Eugene, that are questioning these things too. That's great,
Yeah, it goes back to like a lot of the health, pretty much 99.9% of the healthcare practitioners are stuck in the swamp because they know nothing else either. Mm-hmm. And they're like, how can we tinker and continue to live in the swamp versus, in my mind, it's like, let's leave the swamp, Yeah,
it's true. The problem is as well is that, obviously it's all based on money, isn't it? Like these they're just basically, if you know, there's no money in someone that's healthy and well, so they want you to be. I think what was the stat? It's like 20. The top 20 drugs that sell in America are like all to do with treatment of symptoms, not actually prevention or cure. So it goes to show that the system is sick. And what's the big pharma, the industry worth is trillions of dollars.
Mhm.
So obviously, you know, there's no money in it for them getting people really well. But what I found is actually quite interesting too is that, you know, if you go and see a naturopathic doctor or holistic medicine doctor, that kind of thing, they're basically doing the
Yeah.
same kind of thing,
Yep.
but they're just doing it with natural stuff now. They're just, like you said, they're just tinkering, you know? I'll take
Yeah.
this and that for that and this for this. It's like, no, 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 no. Let the body do what it needs to do and heal itself, basically, is what we really need to do. If there's toxicity there, remove the toxicity. If there's malnourishment, replenish the nutrients. If there's stress there, decrease the stress. You know, and that's how the body heals as a complete whole being, you know. And also you have to diagnose the mind. Here's another thing, and then we better wrap this up pretty soon. A lot of people have everything that they need, all of their needs met, right? And they also aren't obese. They are also in, you know, relatively good condition, and they live in, you know, a nice place in a nice neighborhood. Maybe it could be Newport Coast or wherever it is, Corona del Mar, and their lives are totally miserable. And this is the other thing too, is because it's the mind, isn't it? They have no purpose. That's what I see a lot. When you see people that, you know, sometimes they're living a very privileged life, they're actually quite sad inside, because although the physical body have all its needs met and they're quite, you know, they're healthy in that respect, their mind is the thing that's driving their sickness, because there's no purpose. You know, and that's the other thing. I think that we all need to have something to work towards in this life. And whatever that goal might be for you, having that goal is an important thing to have. And all of it, basically, like you said, whether it's like you're working for that accomplishment of a job and you work towards it for 2 years, you get that job and then it's gone. And you're like, oh, well, where's the sense of accomplishment? Nothing's really wasted, do you know? Because it's like, it's not the end goal. It's kind of like what we did along the way to achieve that. Do you know what I mean? So although it's like it's temporary and it doesn't last, at least you set your mind on something and you work towards it, and that gave you purpose in that time. But I think the ultimate truth of all of this is understanding that there can be no real lasting pleasure that can be had from this body mind. Like, it's all grass, it fades away. You know, it's here today and gone tomorrow. So then, if there's no lasting pleasure that can be had from this body or mind, right, where is the real pleasure? The real pleasure, I believe, personally, only comes in doing good, comes in doing good for others. That is really where I feel that is where pleasure actually exists, and it's long-term contentment, when you're actually striving to do good for someone else, not yourself. Because you see, this egoic thing is all about what it wants for itself. But if you take your mind off yourself and you put, like, look at all the great saints, and they call it karma yoga. So, like, if you go onto ChatGPT, I love ChatGPT. It's a great resource. You go, ChatGPT, give me some of the greatest karma yogis, you know? And, like, obviously in the Hindu tradition, that's where it comes from, karma yoga. They got like the 4 yogas. But it spat out to me Mother Teresa. And if you look at her life, what an interesting person. You know, she was bringing like homeless in off the streets that like full of maggots, and she would clean them up, and then they would die. You know, but she lived her life in utter service of others, and she was content. You know what I mean? I think that is how, you know, first of all, we need to treat the body as an integrated whole. We need to diagnose and treat the body as it is. It needs to be given what it needs. We have physical requirements, pure water, food, air, all the stuff that you obviously already know. But then you need to go above that level, because when you have your basic needs met, you got your house, you got your car, you got that. You can get a new car, but how long does that new car feeling last? Very short time, isn't it? You know, it's like there's a story in the Hindu traditions about the hunter that's always chasing the rabbit, you know, chasing the hare. It's like it either gets away or you get it, but even when you get it, it doesn't last very long, because you're looking for the next one, the bigger accomplishment. You know, it's always, so the thing is, it's like, I think that the ultimate goal of this whole life, and this is what can be symbolized really in the cross. And you know, this is the thing about the spiritual life. If you look at Christianity, and people go, the cross is real, like Jesus died on the cross, and he was born again, he rose, and all this kind of stuff. Okay, maybe it was true, maybe it's not true. It doesn't really matter to me. It's symbolically true, it's metaphorically true. What it means is that for us to be born again in life, in the spirit, we must sacrifice, we must carry our own cross and lay down our own ego. It's ego death. That's what the cross really means. It's like you know, he said that you must pick up your cross, carry it, and follow me. So I think that's the point of it. Is ultimately for us to get lasting happiness, it ends in service of others. That's
Yeah.
my true belief.
Yeah. It would be cool to expand maybe on another podcast because I got to take off soon here too. But it would be good to expand on like the concept of purpose too, because I have a lot of like ideas about that myself as well. But yeah, Warren, it's good to catch up with you.
Bro, so good.
Pretty soon we'll schedule it again for sure.
Yeah, and then Austin, bro, are you going to go to Austin to the World Optimization Summit, that World Health thing?
I might have on it now. I didn't know the tickets were like $2,000.
Oh no, the general admission's only 250 or 280 or something like that.
Oh, I saw the ticket. They only had like two options, like one for 2,000 and one for like 9,000 or something like that. I'll check again.
Check again. I'm going. Another friend of mine is going as well, so I think it'd be quite cool. Like, there's Ben Greenfield's there. Dr. Axe is going to be there. Other biohacker guy. Like, you say biohacking's bullshit. It is bullshit, really. I mean, you can do it. You can do it if you want, but it's better to let the body come into balance and do what it needs to do. But bro, it was great chatting with you today. You got a lot of good wisdom, Eugene. You really have, and I appreciate your. I have reverence for the fact that you seek and you strive and you keep finding, buddy. So that's great.
Okay, I'll text you later today. I thought it was $2,000, but I'll check again.
Yeah, it was like 250 or something I saw. So
okay,
hold on. See you, brother. Cheers, man.
Don't leave. Don't leave.
Okay.
I just want to make sure this is saved. Okay, just in case I don't see you, it was good to have you on the show.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.